reached out to me and said, I saw you there.
Oh, huh. You're good? Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. We'll get the meeting started. I'll call the meeting to order, and Ms. Elric has a statement to read right off the bat.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify some issues regarding concerns about meeting attendance right now. So during the COVID pandemic, the village has been following the advice and recommendations from both Provincial Public Health and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs regarding in-person and electronic council meetings. Well, there are no legislative requirements to accommodate all persons who wish to attend an open council meeting. We have taken the following additional measures to ensure accessibility to open council meetings and enable members of the public to provide input. In June 2020, while in-person attendance was still permitted under public health orders, as well as the provision to allow for fully electronic meetings, the village pivoted quickly to move to a hybrid model where meetings were held in person with limited capacity and live streamed through our newly established YouTube channel. Questions or comments could be posed in person or submitted by email for those who are unable to attend in person. This process continued through to December 1st, 2020, after which a public health order was put in place prohibiting members of the public to attend council meetings in person. Following the December 2nd public health order, which prohibited members from attending in-person council meetings, the village again pivoted to meet the requirements and enable the public to participate by moving the meetings to the Zoom platform, which the province has made temporary allowance for municipalities to use this platform as it does not comply with FOI requirements of having data stored within Canada. Under this format, questions or comments were still permitted by email, and the additional provision was made to allow for the opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or provide comments during the Zoom meeting. As of June 30th, 2021, the public health order was updated to include the provision for inside events that, quote, no more than 50 persons or 50% of the seated operating capacity of the place, excluding event staff, whichever number is greater, end quote. As our council chambers has a capacity of 100, the capacity is set at a maximum of 50 persons. Following recommendations from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and in order to comply with Ministerial Order M192 under the Emergency Program Act, which states, quote, a council must use best efforts to allow members of the public to attend an open meeting of the council or body in a manner that is consistent with any applicable requirements or recommendations made under the Public Health Act. Therefore, we are moving back to the same hybrid model that was followed by the village from June 2020 to December 2020, which includes live streaming through the village's YouTube channel, allowing in-person attendance in compliance with public health orders, allowing for submission of questions or comments via email, and we have added the additional measure this evening of providing an outdoor space where speakers amplify the meeting. We do not have the technical capabilities to live stream the meeting via Zoom and hold an in-person meeting at the same time. We will continue to follow public health recommendations and orders as we move through the 4-step restart plan introduced by the province.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elric. Now, after that, approval of the agenda. Could I get a recommendation that the agenda be approved as circulated? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any item shown on this meeting agenda only. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Would anybody like to provide comments regarding tonight's agenda? Got and if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Trevor Nuko, 275 Alpine Drive. Regarding item 9, zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 650-2021 Bellaterra, I asked Mayor and Council to rescind the second reading to this bylaw and do not adopt the second reading to the amendment bylaw number 650-2021 Bellaterra. There is no community benefit to change the Bellaterra CD6 zone that was previously negotiated. This new bylaw is unnecessary and appears to only benefit Bellaterra. You, Mayor and Council, are condoning what appears to be a bait and switch on the public. This subdivision was already approved, dedications were made, and the residents spoke about it when the original subdivision was done. To come back now to try to rejig the whole thing when the public already has parkland dedication is allowing the developer to do a bait and switch. In the report to Council dated June 30th, 2021, submitted by Chris Boyd, page 20 of tonight's agenda package, it states under Review by Committees, it is staff's recommendation that this proposed amendment zoning bylaw amendment not be referred to committees. It seems strange that with the new Bellaterra proposed alternate creek crossing that affects parks, riparian areas, trails, and lot layouts, the village staff recommend not presenting these topics through committees again. Maybe there is something the committees would object to or have further valuable input. I ask Mayor and Council to defeat zoning bylaw amendment bylaw 650-2021, Bellaterra, and proceed with what was originally approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think, Ken, you're next, and then you're third. Yeah.
Ken Uvick, 120 Lanson Crescent. I just wanted to make the comment.
Could you just take it to the microphone so you can hear it to the live stream? Thank you.
I just wanted to make the comment this evening that, and thank you, Karen, for your explanation of the meeting procedure tonight. And that's the third time I've heard that. There's been several people complaining about the meeting tonight, how it's being held in here, just as we're coming off COVID during this heat spell, and people being nervous and coming out. And I noticed that you have those seats outside in the blazing sun.
I'm just going to ask if you can stay focused on the agenda, Mr. Uvick, please.
Well, you said any item on the agenda, and there's a section right here on the meeting attendance.
Yep.
So, people were upset about this tonight. There's a lot of people here sitting all smushed together. You guys have done a great job over the last year and a half with working at home, limited office time. But for some reason, for this last two important meetings, this council meeting, regular council meeting, and possibly a public hearing on the Bellaterra zoning, we've had to meet inside here instead of doing this on Zoom. And I don't think that was in the best interest of our community members. And it would be great if you guys could listen to common sense and, you know, end this COVID thing properly.
Thank you. Over here, please. And if you could just start off by stating your name and address, please.
Okay, my name is Kirsten Dumont-Aubrey, 1495 East Road in Anmore. I just want to say something from my heart, a little frustrated. The way the infill is structured and set out is nothing short of obstructive, discriminatory and prejudiced. Surely there's a mandate for municipalities to provide infill to allow for smaller houses on smaller lots, to encourage affordable housing, to allow its citizens to age in place. The 150k donation to the village is pure extortion. Each lot should be assessed and allowances should be made and put in place for variances. How many homes have 50 meters frontage on a public highway? For example, our lot has some 150 meters along the road. A subdivided infill lot would have 76 meters. The road is already in existence with all utilities and infrastructure in place. The infill lot would not even be seen from East Road. Isn't that ideal for minimal impact on the village? And there are many more people that probably have similar situations. I would support any class action to investigate the lawfulness of the way the infill is properly set out. The 150k is assuming that anyone who wishes to subdivide is extremely wealthy. That is unlawfully prejudiced. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Mayor, provide sugar nut wine.
Is the mic on? Do you know, Mario?
Can you hear me?
It is working?
Sorry?
Okay.
It's on, blue light, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm over the blue light here.
Okay, I also have a comment to make about the report on infill. My wife, who can't be here today, she actually sent in a report to Karen Elrick, to Mayor and Council, which I assume from what the preamble at the beginning of the first page, you should be reading out today. But I'm just going to summarize it quickly. 1020 Sugar Mountain Way was one of the properties itemized and described in that report and said that it is not going to be able to do infill. The data that was used by Chris Boyd, I think, is incorrect. You do not just take a Google shot and try to calculate that. If you look at the baseline assessment, it gives you exact footage of the house, etc., etc. And we measured everything. We have a 1,200 square foot deck, which became part of the house. That's not right. The garage is 960 square feet. That is correct. It is not a coach house. There's no running water, no toilets, no kitchen, nothing. It's just a room over the garage. Okay? So all of these things, if you take them off, we would definitely fill. If you look at the pictures, you cannot tell me that that half acre will not accommodate a house with one of the FARs available. So what I'm requesting that this report be part of the minutes of this this meeting today, and also that it be corrected because it is incorrect. It is using false data, false information.
Thank you. Any other comments or public input?
Just about knocked the water over again. Tamara Cameron, 265 Alpine Drive. I'd like to comment on item 9A, zoning bylaw amendment 650-221 for Bellaterra. The existing bylaw for Bellaterra CD6 zone clearly states that the comprehensive development plan contained within the bylaw forms an integral component of this zone, a detailed plan that shows roads, lots, and an agreed placement of the Anmore Creek crossing. In the May 12, 2021 staff report to Council that accompanied the original proposed amendment for this bylaw, there was reference to the complete removal of this comprehensive plan and that the revised plan would provide some leeway in processing the proposed subdivision, a revised plan with no detail at all. So I see on the bylaw amendment before you tonight that the comprehensive plan is again replaced, this time with a less detailed plan that only shows the village's dedicated parkland, no roads, lots, or creek crossing. This subdivision was part of a comprehensive development that secured approval in the first place because Bellaterra agreed to certain commitments and land dedications. To approve the bylaw amendment before you tonight would give the village flexibility to amend the subdivision plan and change road and lot layouts that were agreed to 4 years ago. Changes that would hurt neighboring properties, go against your own OCP policy, and affect parkland already dedicated to the village. This should not even be a consideration. I'm asking that Council honor the decisions made through a thorough public consult process at the time the CD zone was initially approved, rescind the second reading, and not adopt a second reading of the proposed bylaw amendment, leaving the CD6 zone as is without any further changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or public input before we get into the meat of the agenda? Please, just state your name and address, please.
Stefan Mitchell, 2345 Sunnyside Road. Most of my stuff is more like questions. I know that I'm not going to get responses right now, but
there won't be any responses. This is
I
just
understand. But
comments.
Yeah. What I'd like to know is why is the infill policy being changed? Why is our infill application being rejected and meets all of your current infill policy and density of 2.04 lots per acre? We started working with your temp planners back in October of 2020. We spent 6 months working with the village planners, only to have it all end when Mr. Boyd was hired to replace the whites that were the temp planners. The roller report says that many municipalities negotiate the roller report says that many municipalities negotiate how the CAC amount is done. And what I'd like to know is, what is the process here for the Village of Anmore? How do we start that process of negotiation? I've been told by Julie multiple times that it's negotiable. However, I've also been told off the record nothing will get approved unless $150,000 is offered. So which is it? Can anyone please articulate why you won't support owners who have larger lots on infill? What's the reason why? Why is the roller report valid when it comes to the $150,000 CAC amount, but invalid when we look at the roller report chart that shows 3 examples of a 3-lot plan for larger acreages? Jason Smith said more than one lot was possible, and density of 2.04 ruled what could be done on any acreage so long as you met the other criteria. Why is the language in the infill FAC and infill policy okay for others before us and now not okay for us, especially when we start in October of 2020? Your staff directed us to do infill approach. We met all the criteria as it is written, and now you rejected our infill proposal. Is there anything written where it states a 10-year wait before a second lot can be achieved? Okay, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Any other comments at public input? Please.
Hello, everybody. Will Crocker. I'm on 2485 Leggett Drive. Council, I think everybody knows me anyway. So, yeah. Anyway, Tim, good to see you back. I just wanted to comment on the bylaw amendment for the Bellaterra property, and I'd like to say that I'm not in favor of that. I think that the OCP was a well thought out plan that had a lot of effort and resources put into it by the Village of Anmore previously. I think if the change is based on the information that has been made available is correct, we would end up with 2 roadways over creeks, one through Bellaterra and one in the future to the Muco lands. Over a creek area that's sensitive also would require extensive engineering and, of course, a lot of cost by the Village of Anmore to maintain that. As the information stands, I'm, as a Village of Anmore person, resident, I'm not satisfied that Anmore is benefiting from the current change. So I see the reason why Bellaterra would want to make the change, but I think it should be revised, and I think they should come back with something that is more favorable to the OCP and the Village of Anmore. Also, I'd like to add in that the OCP had continuous input by Herb Mucol. Now, as you all know, Herb was a councillor of the Village of Anmore, worked tirelessly volunteering to establish trails and community spirit, and he was also a long-term volunteer firefighter. And I think to not take into account the OCP that Herb put so much time into, I think that's the wrong way to go. So I think we could step back, take a second look at it, and come up with an approach that would be more favorable for Bellaterra, the Mucos, and the Village of Anmore. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any last comments before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then. We have a delegation from the Upland Agricultural Consulting Tri-City Food Security Action Plan, and I believe it's Iona Smith.
Close.
Ione Smith, sorry.
It's okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. And here I was thinking that this great turnout was for the food security plan. Well, at least I'll be able to distract you for a few minutes on a different topic. So I'm here today. Thank you for inviting me, Mayor and Council, to present to you the final draft of the Tri-Cities Region Food Security Plan. We defined the Tri-Cities region in this case as the Village of Anmore, the Village of Belcara, City of Coquitlam, City of Port Coquitlam, and the City of Port Moody. And I want to especially thank Councillor Cryer for being part of the steering committee. I know I don't have very much time, so I'm going to quickly go through a bit of a background of the project and the process itself and the engagement that we did, and provide you with a summary of the action plan as it stands, and then hopefully have a couple minutes for feedback or questions. I just wanted to first acknowledge that the project was funded by the Union of BC Municipalities, or UBCM, And in-kind support, primarily through staffing, was provided by all 5 of the municipalities of the Tri-Cities region. And I worked with also my colleague Janine de La Salle, who's with Urban Food Strategies. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Ione Smith. I'm a professional agrologist, and I've been working in the realm of agriculture and food security planning for 12 years. The project was overseen by a steering committee, which was a subset of the Tri-Cities Food Council. That Food Council, as you may be aware, is comprised of council members from all 5 municipalities, planning staff from the City of Port Moody and the City of Coquitlam, representatives of local food banks and emergency food relief organizations and food rescue organizations, School District 43, academic institutions, Fraser Health, and the Public Health Association of BC, as well as the BC Ministry of Children and Family Development. And as someone who's been involved in this type of project for the last 12 years in communities across BC, I can honestly say that this Food Council is one of the most robust and sophisticated in terms of its in terms of the background and the experience that everyone brings to the table. It was a really nice group to work with. This has been a fairly quick project. We received the funding in late last year, in 2020, and we were brought in to manage the project in February of 2021. I don't know why it says 2019. I guarantee it was all of 2021, although COVID did certainly give me a bit of a time warp from time to time. The project was initiated in February, and here we are in July or August towards the end of the plan process there. We had steering committee meetings throughout. We've had 4 so far. We'll have 1 more. We had 2 online virtual public forums, one in April and one just a couple of weeks ago. And we've also been able to do 2 key background reports, which I will mention. And we did 20 one-on-one interviews. We actually did 22 one-on-one interviews with key food system stakeholders from the region. The 2 virtual events had approximately 60 individuals attend, and we also had a survey, which many of you may have completed. We had it translated into 5 different languages. We had over 150 people respond to that survey, which was a great turnout as well. So as I mentioned, we completed a couple of supporting documents. The first is an engagement summary report where we've documented in great detail all of the feedback that we received throughout the lifespan of the project itself, including those survey results and interview results. We also created a community profiles and food security assessment report, and this will be of great interest to the community as we have a chapter for each of the 5 municipalities. So we do have a chapter specific to the village of Anmore, where we look at statistics, demographics, and data to explore food security in different indicators, and also just look at what are some of the policies within the official community plan and zoning bylaws that either support or hinder the addition of urban food strategies for the community. We were also able to complete a food asset map, and that is available on Google. So the link to that is in the report itself. The plan overall takes a long-term vision. So this plan should be, basically relevant for the next 10 years or so. As I mentioned, all 5 local governments were involved. There's 1 vision statement and 5 goals, and actually now 62 recommended actions. It keeps flip-flopping because a couple of the recommended actions get split into sub-actions. But essentially, there's 60 recommended actions for the region to undertake. One key point to consider is that the report looks at 2 forms of food security, both household level and community food security. So when we're talking about household food security, we're primarily looking at poverty or low income and issues around the availability in terms of affordability and access to food. When we look at community food security, however, we're taking a more high-level approach to it, and we're looking at how the food system either is or isn't integrated into the overall community and what level of vulnerability that may or may not bring to the community as well. As I mentioned, there's a vision statement, 5 goals. The goals are broad enough to bring about the desired outcomes to achieve the vision. There are 14 objectives that are associated with those 5 goals, and those are providing general directions for achieving the goals. And as I mentioned, there's about 60 actions, and those are detailed directions on how to take action to achieve the objectives. I wanted to read out the vision statement for you. I've just put here in bullet form some of the key themes that we heard from the public. So this vision statement was really crafted with that feedback in mind. And it's a forward thinking statement. So it doesn't describe, obviously, the current level of food security within the region, but it's looking to the future. So the statement is, the Tri-Cities region collaborates and builds capacity to make sure every resident is food secure and is part of a community where the cost of living is aligned with income levels. The region embraces food as a valuable resource and is striving towards zero food waste. Local nonprofits are key partners in delivering culturally appropriate food programs. Food production and sustainable farming are part of a thriving regional economy. Residents come together through schools, community gardens, and shared kitchens to grow, cook, and celebrate a diversity of foods. And healthy and local food choices are available and accessible by all means of transportation within residential areas throughout the region. I'm going to read out the 5 goals as well, and I'm not going to, I promise I won't go into all 60 actions, but I do have a few examples just to share with you. So there's 5 goals, as I mentioned. The first is to strengthen collaboration to grow internal capacity towards food security at the regional level. And with this, we're really trying to focus on what's within the jurisdiction of local government. We know that, local governments don't have all the tools available that other jurisdictions like the province or the federal government might have to solve things like poverty or guaranteed income levels. But yet there are some tools that are at your disposal, and so we've identified some of those within the actions. The second is to support the work of local food system organizations. There's an amazing amount of nonprofit organizations working in the Tri-Cities around food rescue and food security, and I think it would behoove the entire community to provide some more support to those organizations. The third is to align policies and strengthen regulations to improve food security. The fourth is to invest directly in the local food and agriculture economy. And lastly, to elevate the education and celebration of the cultural diversity of the Tri-Cities regional food system. So I've just got 2 slides with a few examples of those actions, and then I'll finish with just a few comments around implementation. So under Goal 1, which is around that collaboration and capacity building, we have an objective here to increase internal food security planning capacity within the Tri-Cities. And the first action under that is to ensure that municipal staff and councils read the documents associated with the plan, endorse the plan, and sign the accompanying food charter. Obviously, I'm not here to ask for an endorsement of the plan tonight because it's in its final draft phase. But as the project wraps up over the next few months and into the fall, it would be really important for all 5 communities to endorse the plan. The second goal, which was to support the work of local food system organizations, one of the objectives is to increase regional food aggregation and distribution infrastructure. It was identified time and time again that some of these organizations would be able to magnify their ability to impact the community if they had a space to work together, a warehouse, a depot, somewhere where they could actually pull together all of the food that's being donated to them and have cold storage, refrigeration, and so forth. So for this action, it's to look at funding availability, and there's quite a lot of funding post-COVID for COVID recovery around food systems and food security, to conduct a feasibility assessment to determine where that distribution center may best be suited. The third goal, which was to align policies and strengthen regulations to improve food security, the objective is to integrate food security into existing policies and bylaws. So for here, we refer back to that background document around community profiles and the policy assessments for each local government to ensure that the recommendations within that are brought into existing OCPs, zoning bylaws, and other strategies and plans, including things like emergency planning, for example. And Goal 4, to invest directly into the local food and agriculture economy, and that's providing support for local food businesses. I mentioned we've created a food asset map, and that's this action here is to use that map as an advertising tool to connect consumers to local producers, but also to make sure it's kept up to date, to review it at least once a year. A plan is only as good as it can be implemented. So we've spent quite a lot of time looking at implementation options here, and we know that funds are limited at the local government level. So we've also included a funding plan to match each of the actions with potential funding at different levels of government. We've looked at 4 scenarios for implementation. One, that local governments fund an internal lead, so that would be, for example, hiring a staff person, or local governments fund an external lead, so an external consultant, for example. That nonprofit nonprofits lead the implementation. Or scenario D, that there's more of a collaborative effort between governments and nonprofit organization. And that last hybrid model is the model that we're leaning towards, and that we will be meeting with the steering committee one last time later this month to go over some of the details regarding implementation. But that is the hybrid approach that we're looking at right now. And there's some good examples in the report, if you have the time to read it, that document existing strategies and existing plans that also use that approach and have led to great results throughout the province. So that's it in terms of my formal presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Good. Council, any questions or? Ms. Cryer.
I just
Councillor Cryer.
briefly want, excuse me, say thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you. I like the end result here from all of our meetings, and I look forward to that final meeting when we decide exactly how to collaborate. But I, of course, am more than willing to continue on in whatever we plan to do in the future. You've done a great job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor
Good.
Cryer.
Thanks.
And thank you for coming to the council meeting tonight. It's a real pleasure having you.
Thank you very
Great
much.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, we'll get on to the number 5, adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 15th, 2021. The recommendation would read
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 15th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
someone to move those. Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from those minutes? No? Okay, we have a consent agenda. Would anyone, council member, wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? Nope. Could I get the recommendation, could I get someone to move the consent agenda? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. We are now on to legislative reports. Zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 650-2020, Bellaterra CD6. I think, did Ms. Halliwell have something to
It's going to go over to Mr. Boyd.
Oh, Mr. Boyd, okay. Mr. Boyd, floor is yours.
Apologies, Mayor
Yep.
McEwen, you are correct. I did have a statement in regards to this report. There's a couple of zoning-related
Yep.
reports on the agenda tonight,
Okay,
so thank you.
Ms. Halliwell, please.
Yes, so I just wanted to read a brief statement. As a result of recent social media posts regarding the Bellaterra rezoning, the village has obtained some legal advice which has informed the following statement. Much of the exchange on social media is either misleading or overtly untrue, in part because of a lack of clarity between subdivision and zoning issues and an unclear understanding of the current project status. To be clear, what is presently before council is a rezoning application that was initiated by village staff, not the developer. If that succeeds, then there will in all likelihood be a new subdivision application made to the approving officer, and the approving officer will at the time deal with bylaw compliance, lot layout, roads, and creek crossing issues. These considerations are not part of the rezoning application. The approving officer in his role has an obligation to ensure that all requirements of the bylaw are met, including not landlocking adjacent property owners. As you of course know, the background to this property is that the lands were lawfully rezoned in 2015, and the first of 2 phases was subsequently lawfully subdivided. As is pointed out in the exchange, zoning is a council decision, and subdivision is an approving officer decision, which is an independent statutory role governed by legislation. But that is somewhat an oversimplification. An approving officer has the statutory right to consult with others as part of their review of a proposed subdivision application, including the municipal council. This is what occurred last December when the developer was seeking to pursue an application to amend their preliminary lot layout, and the approving officer consulted with council in order to determine if council would support a roadway through parkland. This was done in a lawfully conducted closed meeting to allow for the receipt of legal advice and to discuss land issues, as is authorized under the community charter. The outcome of the meeting was then immediately released. The first phase of the subdivision included dedication of an area as park some time ago. Our understanding is that there's no intention to dispose of or exchange parkland, and so the portions of the social media posts referencing those provisions in the community charter are completely irrelevant. Just to be crystal clear, there is no proposal to remove parkland. There is no prohibition against a park containing a portion of road. Indeed, many parks have roads within their boundaries that in some cases are actually essential to allow for the most expedient use of the park itself. Subsequent to the approving officer seeking input from both council and the adjacent property owner, it was determined by the approving officer that the subdivision as proposed could not be approved because of an inadvertent inconsistency on the number of permitted lots within the zoning bylaw, which is why the rezoning is before council at this time. Underlying these posts is, of course, some opposition to the project, and all of those who deem their interest in property to be affected have a clear legal entitlement to make council aware of their views on point at a public hearing. However, it is inaccurate to suggest that unlawful secret meetings took place in some improper way, nor is it correct to say that there is a lawful impediment to council approving the rezoning application if that is what they choose in their sole discretion to do.
Thank you. Okay, now move over to you, Mr. Boyd. If you could make sure you turn your microphone on, please.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Well, thank you for those 4 words, Julie. I stole some of my thunder I was going to introduce you. Going forward with this bylaw amendment here, first off, I'd like to give my apologies, but it came to staff's attention that the inclusion of the maximum parcel size meant the existing property in the zone would become non-conforming on review. So on review, we recommend that the reference to maximum parcel size be removed from the bylaw. So, in recommendation, I'll go through the background. So the background, following the presentation of Anmore zoning bylaw amendment number 650201 at the May 18th, 2021 regular council meeting, staff received comments from the landowner. There were some formatting issues identified within the bylaw. So the main issues which were identified by the landowner were, one, the mistake that I made was that the maximum parcel size was there and within the existing subdivision, Zone 1, that would create 4 lots which would no longer be non-conforming, and we didn't want to cause that. And the next one was in reflection that there had been reference to the previous bylaw that there had been relaxations on the setbacks, and we removed those through the rezoning. And so it's our recommendation that we reintroduce the relaxation on the setbacks. And still, we believe that as staff, it's still within the realms of what the existing committees have reviewed, and we're looking to amend this bylaw in relation to the number of allowable lots at this point in time. So that's the report. So the option that's on the number of options on the table here. Would like me to read the...
Do you have the staff recommended option,
yeah.
please?
So the council amend Anmore zoning amendment bylaw number 6502021 under section 9.18.2 to remove reference to maximum parcel size, 9.18.3 to amend the table reference to 9.18.3, under section 9.18.4 to amend the table reference to change the interior and exterior parcel line setbacks, and under section 9.18.9 to amend the development plan as attached to the bylaw and reread the bylaw for a second time. Okay. And that staff be directed to set a date for the public hearing for Anmore zoning bylaw amendment number 6502021.
Can I get someone to move that recommendation? Moved, seconded. I'll open up for discussion. Any discussion? Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this. I'm going to smack this thing. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. There's been a lot of discussion around this. It started out as a minor change that was presented to council, a picture, what do you like better, this or that. We liked the current layout. It was a little bit, it was obviously there was some safety concerns. I really want to see this go to public hearing because I know a lot of people were concerned about that. So I'd like to move this forward and get this all resolved. I hope everybody's going to be happy. I don't know if everyone's going to be happy, but I certainly hope so. So
good. Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now we're going on to 9B, the zoning bylaw review. I just wanted to, before we go on to this, I just wanted to, all the council received a letter from Ms. Burton in regards to some of her concerns and frustration regarding a property being identified in a report, which was a report that Mr. Boyd has done to just show examples, not to really be specific in regards to anything. And I phoned up Ms. Burton this afternoon and had a challenging discussion with her in regards to extending an apology. Council was unaware of any of the properties that were even being used in this as an example to be able to educate people and that. So I just wanted to pass on my regrets that there was nothing done maliciously whatsoever in regards to this. So, okay, we'll now move on to the zoning bylaw review. And with this, we're going to divide this up into 3 parcels. We're going to divide it up into, I think, first of all, we're going to do the infill. Second of all, we're going to do the, what's the subdivision? Birchwind, and then we're going to do have a discussion about the zoning in general. So as I have always in the past recused myself when it comes to anything to do with infill, although I've never applied for infill, I don't even know if my property is eligible for infill. I'm just going to simply be recusing myself as my practice has been throughout. So at this point, I'm going to pass over the reins to Acting Mayor, which is Acting Trowbridge. So
Acting Trowbridge.
Acting Trowbridge.
Actually, the real Trowbridge.
Excuse me, Mayor McCune, if I could just ask you to state the reason that you're going to recuse?
Oh, due to a possible conflict of interest.
Thank you.
And then I think
I'm going to recuse myself because currently I have a application or my son does, to infill on our property.
Thanks. Escort the prisoners out.
Are you staying there?
No, I can stay here, can't I? Do I need to move? No. I'm still the real Trowbridge. Okay, so broken into 3 parts. The only part, just a matter of protocol, the only part I need to deal with is the infill, and then they will return and we'll go on with the other 2 pieces. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Mr. Boyd will go over his report, present the information within the report. We can then consider a recommendation associated with the infill policy itself while you 3 are present, and then we can bring the other 2 members of council back.
And with the only 3 remaining, we still have quorum and we can vote?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so then, Mr. Boyd, if you would proceed with your report, please.
Just so, before I get on to the depths of the report, as the apology the Mayor just gave, the examples within this report are examples. I have no idea where people live within this village. I literally scanned over the aerial map of the village and was looking for parcels of land which looked like they should be able to qualify for infill. So that's how some of these properties were chosen. And so, on review of the existing policy and considering the amendments...
Excuse me, may I interrupt briefly? On that point, there was a comment made that using that example defined the property in question in that example as one that doesn't qualify. That's not the case. There's been no determination of anything.
No, it's just the examples that I've given are just a general idea to highlight what possible problems we have with the existing policy at this moment in time.
To actually help the landowner.
Yeah, so that's basically the whole thing here, is that the intent of the review here is to try and make sure that the rezoning is an intent of the Mayor's task force, and to try and make sure that people can get infill. Because right now I've had a number of applications come forward, and when I review the intent of the policy and their application, it won't work with regards to setback requirements, FAR requirements. So that's why this review is going to come forward, is because I've realised that in reality a lot of these infill requirements can't be met, and I think it is the public's interest that they wanted to have infill within Anmore, and the Mayor's Task Force has highlighted that. So I've kind of gone back and seen where we can look at this policy and see if we can allow infill within this village and stay within a policy and a zoning requirement.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted clarity on that, where you were thinking.
Yeah. So, and so every time that I've reviewed this policy, I've always looked at it in the lens of the Mayor's Task Force wanted to allow infill of lots which were greater than 1 acre and less than 2 acres, and provide one additional lot at each time. And also, the most important part was being able to allow the subdivision and retain that house on the existing property without having to do large alterations to it. But with the way the policy is written right now, majority of these applications would require significant alteration to reduce their FAR. I'm not saying the applications that have gone forward already with regards to Lynn Burton, mine was just a high level review. She knew a lot more about her property and saying it probably does qualify, and maybe it does. I don't know. I haven't done the in-depth analysis on it. I'm not precluding that her property can't become infilled. I'm just saying that some of these issues that arise as part of my analysis. So, with that in tow, I just want to go through here and just give a bit of an outline of what I've kind of found with the policy and the problems that have been arisen. This all came about from a recommendation from council that staff be directed to prepare a report back with amendments to the zoning bylaw and works and services bylaw to ensure consistency, clarity with current standards, make sure they're being met. So we updated the works and services bylaw. That's in place at this point in time. So additionally, staff has spent some more time reviewing the infill development. We've reviewed other sections within Anmore to see if they're compliant with zoning that they're under right now. So, in regards to the infill policy, what's also referred to as the RS1A zone, as part of the review and in reviewing the infill development application, staff have analysed the current applications and future applications, and we found that there's a number of problematic areas within the policy that again don't allow for infill to happen, even though we believe that the sections which have come forward, the applications which have come forward, truly meet, I think, the task force intent of allowing infill. The 1 acre lots, the houses aren't huge, they're onto one side of the property that has a nice section of property that can be carved off for the infill. However, regarding the infill intent where it says it must be half acre, it becomes problematic, and then the FAR requirement becomes even more problematic on a lot of these existing properties. Hence why I brought it back with this review to say I think there's some things we could tweak here to make it better and be able to allow the infill of these lots and make it easy on the proponents, because as a number of proponents have stepped up already, it's pretty stressful to do this, and right now the policy is so difficult that it makes it even more stressful. So I'm trying to find a way to help these proponents go forward. So with that in mind, so the 7 tenets that I've kind of always been reverting back to when I've reviewed this policy is that there's an opportunity for the village to decrease the tax burden on existing residents by gently increasing density. Infill is to occur on a developed parcel of land between 1 acre and 2 acres. Keep the density below 2.0 parcels per acre. I'll come back to this 2.0 parcels per acre because there's a very important conversation to be had around this section, because in the past it's been 2.4. I think maybe it should stay as 2.4, and I'll get into the reason why in a little bit. Increased density in non-hillside areas. Allow for development on a single additional lot on it, and it to occur every 10 years. I'll come back to this every 10 years section. 6, provide an opportunity for residents to age in place, or provide an opportunity for a family member to remain in or move back to Anmore. And 7, during the subdivision process, the existing residents would not require significant modifications to make it a conforming lot. So it's really important to understand that when you go through subdivision, your existing house is probably compliant at this point in time. But as soon as you carve off a piece of land on your property, that FAR ratio really affects your existing house, which will become a new lot, and the next lot. And your house needs to remain conforming for it to be able to be subdivided and approved by the approving officer. So that's why we really need to review this FAR requirement. Okay. So the way I've kind of gone through this is I've kind of taken the policy and gone through each heading of each policy and kind of written down what the policy is right now and perhaps what the recommendations could be to relax it or find ways to overcome the issues which are there right now. So the first one is the parcel size. So the maximum density that is permitted in the official community plan for infill development is 2.04 parcels per acre. The expectation is that most of these new parcels created through infill development will be approximately half acre in size. Parcels as small as 1/3 of an acre will be considered in compelling circumstances, such as to enhance tree preservation, the provision of public trails, or other community benefit. So it's really important, that section there, that you understand that unless there is one of those extenuating circumstances, council, in regards to the policy, perhaps shouldn't provide rezoning, because if your lot can't create half an acre because of where your house is situated and the setback required, you can't get to a half an acre. Okay, so that's kind of an important nuance there to understand. Okay, so with regards to the location of this existing property, it makes it really difficult to create half an acre. I kind of have a bit of an illustration in the back here of not all parcels of land have a property that's situated right on the very edge, meets the existing setback, and then when you apply the new setbacks and put a new dotted line down for subdivision, that they're actually able to make it via a 5-meter setback. It becomes problematic. That's the info. And then again, the FAR ratio is being exceeded on most properties that I review. And again, it comes back down to, I don't think as the public or as council's intention was to cause existing homeowners to have to take down parts of their house to make it conforming. That isn't the intent, and so again, that's where we're looking at the FAR ratio. Okay, one really important, actually I'll get to that next section, no, the parcel size. So the other part is the development size and allowing parcels of 2.04 parcels per acre. It sounds kind of weird having 2.40, and I've kind of gone back and forth, and in some conversation with existing residents, reviewing the bylaw again, I maintain that it should actually go back to 2.04 acres. It's because within our bylaw, we allow 1 acre parcels to actually not be 1 acre parcels. We actually have this section within it because of old ways that this municipality was subdivided, that not all 1 acre parcels were created equal. There are some which, for whatever reasons, were slightly below 1 acre, and there is a number which are actually 0.98 acres. And so when we change the density to 2, it probably precludes those lots from being able to get to that area. And I don't want to do that to people. I think, personally from a common sense point of view, 0.02 of an acre missing, I don't think that really in common sense says you're not an acre. I think in reality you're still an acre at that point in time. So I think we should continue on with that practice. Okay, so there's a number of figures contained within the report, and they kind of highlight some of the issues again with regard to FAR and how the FAR works on properties and how setbacks are established and how the existing lot needs to conform and the new lot being created. And so the majority of the time in a lot of the examples, and again, they're not 100% accurate, but I'm trying to highlight some of the issues that come about on when you create this dotted line. So again, when I review it, I believe the setback should be relaxed to help people achieve infill. Okay, so road frontage, I think the road frontage, there's no need to change the road frontage. I think that's kind of pretty standard, including a 25-meter frontage on any parcel. It fits within the existing zone. I don't think that's a huge issue for people. I think it should stay. I don't have any comment on that. I've kind of talked about the setbacks and parcel coverage right now. Due to the site constraints, again, as prescribed in the parcel size section, it's recommended that the side set yard be reduced to 3 meters. Again, the reason I recommend it gets reduced to 3 meters is because it allows the new infill lot to be slightly larger. It actually gives you another 2 meters all the way along that property line to be able to give over to the parcel. So to try and create parcels which are almost a half acre in size or just below half acre in size. So that's still another important component that I believe it should be there. And also, in review of some of these parcels, when you start looking at the actual frontage of the property, think about it, you've only got 25 meters, but if your property has to have 5 meters offset from one line and 5 meters set from the other line, you've lost almost half of your width of your property to space, and so therefore it really constrains the developer, not developer, the person who's building the house to basically create a form of a house which is just a straight up square to maximize the FAR that they're allowed within it. And so the reduction of the side setback should allow you to have some more creative frontages along the properties. So hence that's another recommendation that I believe should go forward for 3 meters. I kind of given some examples in the report of how that might look and feel. Again, house sizes, this is obviously a really important piece here. We don't have the math figured out right now, depending on how council proceed with the policy at this point in time. We'll look at creating a ratio table to allow that the existing properties stay compliant, and then the new property will have more or less the same kind of requirements. So that's one of the things we're really cognizant of, and that's what I found a number of times that a lot of these properties fail on. And then another piece of this is the creation of lots after 10 years. So the only way that this can be introduced onto a property is via what's called a Covenant 219, and that basically refers to when something gets rezoned, council have the opportunity to impose something onto that property, and that's the only time they can do it is through rezoning. So if council wanted to proceed with a 10-year moratorium on subdivision, it would have to happen during subdivision through rezoning, and it can't be done through subdivision. So that's an important part to understand. Okay, so, and then also there's another section within that I should touch upon. So the LGA, I reviewed it extensively recently, and there isn't actually a requirement in the LGA to say you're only allowed to subdivide a property X amount of time. There is some reference within it with regards to large parcels of land, and it's really in reference to farmland and carving off 2 hectares of property to give over to a family member. And then there's a moratorium of 5 years on it. So on the policy that I recommended, maybe it might be a thought for council to consider that reducing the 10 years to 5 years to bring it more in line with what the LGA kind of speaks about in that carving off a parcel to give it to a family member. Maybe a 5-year moratorium is kind of a reasonable expectation on that. So continue, drink of water. So, community amenity contribution. This again is in relation to ensure that the infill development enhances the larger community, and the amenities will be expected. The following amenities are seen as particularly desirable to the community: trails, riparian areas, a new community space / municipal hall. So the village needs to gather the space and a new municipal hall. This is a costly project for the village with limited financial means. So to realize the amenities, a community amenity contribution target of $150,000 was established based on the analysis provided by J.P. Rollo and Associates, and a combination of land and financial contribution will be considered where feasible and is in the community's interest. So this is an important distinction. Again, I remember reading somewhere that someone was talking about, it's a negotiation. It has to be a negotiation. You can't just straight out say $150,000. Council, during a rezoning application, must review the application and have an opportunity to negotiate that fund. Not saying they have to bring down $150,000, but they must consider negotiation at that time, which could be a combination of funds, an additional land given up to the municipality. It could be all kinds of different things, but it needs to be a negotiation, because otherwise council overstep their bounds and they're not in accordance with the LGA. So that's again a really important contribution to think about. And so my main comment would be that the CACs still seem to be appropriate based on GP Rollo's report. But however, it should be reviewed again in the next couple of years as the market changes. We want to ensure that if the market goes up or if the market goes down, the contribution is in line with where the market's at. So that's just something to consider. Tree retention. We have a tree retention bylaw, and so tree retention on any lot should and must abide by the tree retention bylaw. So whenever a subdivision comes forward, the approving officer must review the subdivision and have it in accordance with the tree retention bylaw. Okay, and infrastructure. This again talks to making sure that new infrastructure does not need to be created during the subdivision process, and staff do not have any real comments about that. So, if I go to the policy, council's consideration. Okay, we'll read through the policy.
Page number?
Page 54. Infill development is the creation of new parcels and homes within the already developed area of Anmore to ensure that this new development maintains and enhances the semi-rural character of the village and the infill development policy that has been developed. The policy is intended to provide guidelines and articulate the community's expectation as to how infill development should take shape. It should be noted that the policy is a framework for determining the possible public benefits related to development and does not limit council's ability to reject or approve such applications based on their merits. So that's really important, that this is a policy, and whenever a bylaw comes forward, as was read out earlier, it's in council's purview to decide if the rezoning meets the community's values or not. They're not held by this policy, that if everyone meets what's in this policy, they don't have to still provide rezoning. It's still a council decision if they provide rezoning or not. So that's just a really important part within the policy, to make sure you guys are aware of that. Thanks. So, one section of this policy that I truly believe needs to have a bit of a discussion from council through this process is the maximum density shall be 2.0 parcels per acre. I personally think we should go, now that I reviewed it more and more, I think it should go back to 2.04, which allows the infill of 0.98 acres lots, okay?
So based on what you're saying, should we change this?
Yes.
Because that's your proposal, so we should alter that within here. And that's what we'll be voting on?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The expectation is that new parcels created through infill development will be half acre in size. However, in circumstances where half acre cannot be achieved due to site constraints, the infill parcel shall be created as large as possible, as illustrated in Figure 1. The minimal allowable parcel size shall be 1/3 of an acre. Hook lots or ununiform lots will not be considered. So the reason that is in there, we want to try and create lots which are uniform, and what we don't want to start creating is lots where just to get to half acre you start kind of doing these funny cutouts on your property and stuff. We want kind of uniform shapes within a property, okay? So again, the minimal parcel size will be half acre at an absolute minimum. However, it's council's expectation that the lot be maximised as much as possible. Okay, parcel size. The expectation is that new parcels created through infill development will be half acre in size. However, in circumstances where half an acre cannot be achieved due to the location of the existing property, the infill parcel should be created as large as possible, as illustrated. The minimum allowable parcel size shall be 1/3 of an acre. Hook lots or non-uniform lots shall be considered. Sorry, that's duplicated.
It appears
Sorry, I already
twice.
read that already. Yeah. So, creation of parcels. The intent of infill is to allow the creation of one additional parcel every 5 years, no matter the size of the property. This will be enforced via a covenant on title. So again, this 5 years is an important decision to be made, and the only way that a 5-year moratorium can be placed on a property is when it's at rezoning. Okay, it can't be done during subdivision or prior to. It's something that needs to be done at rezoning. Okay.
But the recommendation is to move it from the old policy of 10 to half.
Yeah, to bring it more in line with what the LGA talks about with regards to existing large properties that want to parcel off a section to give to a family member.
Got it.
So I kind of feel like that would be an appropriate measure.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you said there was no policy regarding the 10 years.
Sorry, excuse me? Carry on.
Yeah. Okay. Road frontage, to maintain a semi-rural character and to maintain green space between homes, all parcels created through infill development must have 25-metre frontage on a public highway. Setbacks and parcel coverage, to maintain the village of Anmore's character and to ensure that the development is consistent with the intent of infill, side yard setbacks be reduced to 3 metres. House size. The allowable floor area ratio should be ratioed on parcel size. The intent is to limit the modifications required on existing properties to ensure that they are conforming parcels once they are subdivided. Sorry, one thing I didn't talk about in the main body of the report, the table that is in there is just an illustration. It is not the table which will be put into the zone if this goes forward. It is just an illustration of how you could ratio out based on size of parcel land.
So we should disregard that table but it's the concept of
Yes.
the table that we're, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Community amenity contribution. To ensure that the infill development enhances the larger community, amenities will be expected. The following amenities are seen to be as particularly desirable for the community: trails, the riparian areas, a new community space municipal hall. So again, this is the standard from the past policy, where to realise these amenities, a community amenity contribution target of $150,000 has been established based on the analysis provided by GP Rolo and Associates. A combination of land and financial contribution will be considered where feasible and is in the community's interest. Number 8, tree retention. Trees and green space are an important component of the character of the village. Trees along with the road frontage and between homes are particularly important in maintaining the semi-rural character. Tree retention should be in accordance with the current Anmore tree management bylaw. And then infrastructure. Financial sustainability is imperative for the village. Therefore, any proposed infill development must not require the expansion of public infrastructure, in particular new road and water lines. So that kind of sums up the main sections of the proposed changes to the policy.
Councillor Trowbridge, if you would allow me, I've got just a bit of an amended recommendation that I could read for council's consideration based on the changes that we
Yeah,
discussed.
that would be helpful, because we're sort of going along and inking things, and
Yeah.
that would help.
Okay, so the recommendation is that council approve the amended policy number 61, infill development, as attached to this report, and further amended by changing section 1, parcel density, to read, the maximum density shall be 2.04 parcels per acre, and only one additional lot shall be allowed.
Okay. Can I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Wavering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Boyd. I was on the task force for infill, and I'm sure many of you remember, it was a very contentious issue. There was a lot of people that didn't want subdivision, they didn't want half acres, they were very adamant about that. And the whole intent of the infill policy was to sort of find balance and to sort of respect the people that did want it. So we looked at how would it, be the least amount of impact on established neighborhoods. And I remember discussing the intent of having, one lot at a time and wait 10 years, so you don't have that big impact if you're in a 1 acre neighborhood. It's also subject to public hearings, and it is a rezoning application. It's not a guaranteed. As far as the amenity contribution, I asked that question several times because it did appear that we were selling zoning and you were not allowed to do that. But the 150 was a target, a starting point. It is a negotiated amount, and being on the Environment Committee, I would have always advocated for saving trees, possibly acquiring them as part of the village. We would look at trail acquisition. We wanted to kind of leave our options open there, but if you had a lot that was subdividable and there was no opportunity for that, well then the cash amount was a target that you could budget for. I mean, it's a win-win. You're creating an extra lot, you're making a lot of money. And that was the idea, that the village got something out of it, and we're certainly not opposed to anybody making money on their property, but it's not our goal to accommodate that, I suppose. I don't know if I'm not opposed to the 5-year, if that's more in line with standard practice. I think that might be a fair change. Yeah, and then I had a couple of scenarios. I guess a question through the chair for Mr. Boyd. If there was, say, a slightly under 2 acre parcel, and there was a big piece of land that we wanted to acquire, something that the village had wanted, maybe it's adjacent to a park or something like that, would the current policy limit us in allowing further subdivision if we could acquire that land as part of the negotiation? Say you did say, okay, well, we will give you 3 lots if we can have that, 0.75 acre parcel for park. Or would that not be the way to do it?
The answer is yes, because it's a rezoning.
Right.
And so as through rezoning, it's in council's purview to decide what is in the community's best interests.
Right.
Or not. So,
Or would that be a CD? Would that just be best for someone to do a CD in that case?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a hard, the way I would look at that one would be, okay, if you're allowing these lots and you took the land as the contribution instead
Exactly.
of the money and say, okay, you know, we believe it's in the community's best interest to allow this, because it's a zoning, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any lot that applies to. I'm just thinking in the
Yeah.
future. I don't want to tie future council's hands in this.
So just make clarification, a
Tim's?
bylaw trumps a policy.
Correct, I understand that.
So even what a policy says, a bylaw can always trump a policy to some degree.
And I also like the changes, if you've got a house that, the intent is not to make it particularly onerous for people to do this. One of the advantages when we were on the task force of creating a smaller lot, if that was what it took, was it does create a cheaper lot that allows for a smaller house, which is less expensive. That was a concern, and we were always talking about affordable housing. I don't know if anything on even a 3rd-acre lot that you could build is going to be considered affordable, but it's probably more affordable than what we're building on 1-acre lots. So that was one of the advantages of that. So those are my only comments.
Okay. Councillor Quire.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of points, being the newest member of council. When I came on board and was being brought up to speed on infill, what you've described, Mr. Boyd, is exactly the way I was under the impression that it was to be. So at that time, I hadn't gotten into all of the minutia of, you know, what is written. So I appreciate now that it's been gone through and it's clarified what I was under the impression it always was. And further to what Councillor Wevering said, without the infill, you can't develop at all. So I know there's opposition to $150,000, but if you're selling a lot for over $1 million, it is a win-win. And I think that is in the best interest of the village. As far as the 5-year limit, I do support that. I think that's a good move to be consistent with the LGA, and also I also support the 2023 review of the CAC. I think it is something that we would have to revisit often as the market changes frequently. That is all I have.
Thank you. Am I permitted question? Okay. I'm used to being a council member now. Okay. I have 2 questions and a couple of comments. First of all, I like the floating FAR, for want of a better term, concept, because you know, when we started talking about this, the intent was not to take, I think back in the day when I was on the task force as well, I think there were roughly 35 properties that could qualify. It was never said they would, but could. I certainly hate to see that pared down to some tiny little number because of flaws in how the policy is written. So I applaud that we're reviewing it. It's a good thing. I support the 2.04. I love the reduction from 10 to 5 years. I think it's more realistic. Some of us couldn't last 10 years to wait for that to happen. That's a long time. A decade's a long time, and I don't think it's reasonable. So all that makes sense to me. But I have 2 questions. First, the tree retention, the way it's written here, I am assuming that it's like everything else in Anmore, that there's 20% required tree retention. But can I assume, or I better not assume, can you answer, can that be tree replacement, or are you literally writing a policy where they have to retain standing trees?
So the way the policy would be written is that it refers back to the tree retention bylaw. And so whatever the tree retention bylaw says, that's what they need to meet at subdivision.
Okay, that answers my question. And then this is an evolving document. I mean, we had all good intentions 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe, when we did this, recognizing that it wasn't a recommendation by council to create this. This was the public that wanted this created, and we did our best. And I think we succeeded largely, but all new policies and zones tend to evolve over time. As you work through them, the problems arise as you work through them. So my question is this policy going to be able to be reviewed in the future and sort of be not a flexible, but kind of a living document, so that if we bump up against some more hurdles that prevent people from doing this, we can amend it?
Yeah, it's very much in council's purview. If you want to come back and review a policy, it's a case of you review the OCP, the policy, and zoning bylaw at the same time. You do go through those steps to make sure that you're in alignment with what the community's expectations are, and so that it's updated to reflect what the community's expectations are and council's expectations are. So yes, the answer is you could change this policy in the future if you wanted to.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Councillor Wavering, do you have another comment, question? You can't work that, can you?
There we go. It's me. Just a question on the tree bylaw. I mean, we're on our second version of the tree bylaw. I understand. I mean, whenever we do a bylaw, there's always, both sides are not happy. If you've got both sides that are not happy, you've probably found balance. It's sad to say, but that's kind of the way it is. A lot of people are concerned when they build their house that trees are going to hit their house, which is the whole idea that, well, you can take down your trees as long as you replant. I mean, as the Environment Committee Chair, I'm very concerned about, I like to see stands of mature trees. I like to see forest ecosystems. If we were to negotiate this in an infill development, say, you had 0.6 of an acre with an existing house and they had a nice stand of trees, could you put a protective covenant on those trees, and would they still be able to get a survey that says, oh, these trees are unsafe, you've got to take them down? Like, what are the mechanics of that? Is that even possible?
To be honest, I don't have the answer at my fingertips. What I would probably say is that we always, two things, is that, as kind of explained earlier, is that council have input at rezoning and not at subdivision.
Right.
Okay, so these things would have to be taken care of at rezoning. And again, it's in council's purview to decide on what is at the community's best, what's the best for you. If you decided that those standard trees are sacrosanct and you wanted to have a covenant put in place, it would be my belief that you could. It'd have to be done through rezoning and say that those trees must remain as part of whatever goes forward.
Yeah, I mean, because what we've learned in the Environment Committee, it's very hard to preserve trees on private land. Any subsequent council can change the tree bylaw the first week they get in and say, trees are unsafe, we're going to take them down. The only way to save trees is to acquire them as part of village property. But I noticed, I remember on the very first infill we did negotiate some tree retention, and that was one of the arguments for going for the 1/3 acre lot. But it's still subject to the tree retention bylaw, which means they can take down 2 a year without even getting a permit, and more if they get a permit.
Yeah, and so there's, through the chair there, in response, I would also say that you've got to remember trees are living things as well. They come up and they come down.
Yeah.
And so to say a covenant saying you're not allowed to take down that tree, well, if it falls down by natural causes, you're breaking the covenant. That'd be a good legal question to answer. So sometimes it's kind of hard to do that. And also, there's another part of why we request through the tree retention policy, or bylaw, an arborist report, is because there's other things that if a lot is completely forested right now and you start taking out trees, that you then start running into the thing called windrow, which means the trees which didn't see lots of wind load in the past, their roots weren't developed to stop them from falling over. And so sometimes an arborist will come through and say, hey, if you take down these trees are likely to come down in a windstorm, so we recommend you take them down now, instead of rolling the dice to see if they come down or not in the middle of a windstorm, coming down in a nice new house that you've built. So
yeah, and long term, I think replanted trees in 20 years is going to be a better ecosystem. It's going to be stronger. They're going to grow strong, and I understand. And that was all discussed when we did the tree bylaw. So, okay, it was just a question.
I was going to call the question, and I just saw one of my notes, and so quickly, because we need to move on. The GP Rollo, I remember going through that report in detail, and there is a grid on there where they talk about multiple lots and so on. My recollection of that, explained by the representative, was that was not prescriptive in any way. They were not suggesting multiples in any way. It was simply an example to show the numbers. That's Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Okay.
So I've had, through Chair again, I get a little bit of clarification on that. Anmore sits in a very kind of strange kind of world in the Lower Mainland, as in most of the Lower Mainland don't allow half-acre lots or third-acre lots. Most of the Lower Mainland, as you know, they're way smaller, and so when you try and take comparisons of lift against that kind of size of property, it's kind of hard to find comparisons which are in the Lower Mainland.
Right.
And at the same time, so that's through GP Rolo. So they got to try and do some analysis and figuring out, okay, how does this work in the Anmore situation?
Yeah, because, okay, if there's nothing else? No? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Can you bring the prisoner?
Wait, before you bring John in.
Oh. Gonna switch.
Right. Oh, you think it's a mic
That's a good
issue.
move.
This works good.
That's a good move. I like that.
He'll see it on the movie later.
Yeah, you'll be busted. Okay, I can click off.
Click off.
It was pretty warm over in the other area. Not a lot of air conditioning.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay. So we're now on to the Birchwind. Okay, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Mr. Boyd, let's do the remainder of the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so, sorry, I came from the Birchwind, so I thought Birchwind.
I think it's also referred to as the McCulloch subdivision.
That helps me remind me which way to refer to it. Okay, Birchwind subdivision. So, the Birchwind subdivision is kind of a strange subdivision within Anmore. It currently is zoned as RS1, and so RS1 really typically refers to 1 acre lots, more or less. And so the RS1 zone was developed for parcels of land which are larger than 1 acre, with exceptions for some which could be 0.8 of an acre, and there's also a 0.9 acre, 9 acres as well. So the main parameters of the RS1 zone include large yard side setbacks, low lot coverage, and low FAR ratios. These parameters work well on a large parcel of land, and they help to limit the size of the properties. However, Birchwind subdivision does not contain 1 acre parcels, and it generally is made up of 1/5 of an acre parcels. That means that all the lots and homes currently classified as legal non-conforming. So what that means is, it doesn't mean that, oh, tear down your house, it's not conforming. It just means that the zoning has changed over the years. It means that they're now legal non-conforming. Nothing the way the house stands right now, the municipality can do say, you need to change this, okay? It's a legally non-conforming, which is okay. However, there becomes a problem if the property were to become damaged or require significant renovations. It's unlikely the homeowner could legally complete the repairs on the home, as the new property cannot conform to the required zone under RS1. So this is a really important consideration to make on Birchwind, is that through no fault of no one's fault, if a house got burnt down, the process would be that the Frontage stuff would come back to rebuild the property. And so when it comes back to the property and being rebuilt, you submit plans, and as part of the plan checking process, your house gets checked against the zone. And so the zoning includes 5 meter setbacks, FAR requirements, and those other bits and pieces. And so when we apply the setback requirements to the majority of the homes on Birchwind, they don't conform. They're between like 1 meter and 3 meters. But right now the RS1 zone says it must be 5 meters. So that's one problem. The next one becomes the FAR requirements. Some of them may already adhere to the RS1. I haven't gone through and done a large analysis, but a quick review says they probably do not actually meet the FAR requirements or the lot coverage. I think in the past what had happened, the subdivision was created and then zoning moved on for whatever reason, they just kind of got lumped into RS1 zone. I think at this point in time, especially with the age of the subdivision, property owners might be considering to completely renovate their homes. So at that point, plan check would occur, they feel, oh, sorry, you can't do anything to your home. And I don't, from my perspective as staff, I don't think that's a real fair thing to happen to a homeowner under no fault of their own, that they can basically downsize by accident, I think, over the past. So I think it would be wise to perhaps look at the rezoning and come up with a rezoning for which one.
And I know a recent example of that was when we had the fire there. I guess that was about 6 years ago.
Something like that.
It took the homeowner several years just to be able to build something to even comply into that, and it was very, very challenging. So this unfortunate did happen, and there are some challenges there. So.
As part of the review process, I've recommended that we look at that zone in its entirety and
Yeah.
change it to the rezone.
Okay.
And then the equestrian zone, C3. So again, I think this is again another historical circumstance that happened. The resident provided me with a lot of information at past council meetings, showing there were resolutions to change part of the C3 zone into an RS1 zone. I think when we adopted the new bylaw, for whatever reason that was left off or lost in translation, and it got rezoned in its entirety to C3. And so there's a number of properties which are already built on the property that placement in the C3 zone, which don't really allow the building and stuff. So again, I think it's wise to look at this property in the zone to change it to an RS1 zone. So it means everything that's within that zone now would be compliant. And historically, talking to the homeowners, the property owners, the land right now isn't used for equestrian uses, and it doesn't intend to be used as an equestrian use in the future. So I think to clear up that situation, I recommend that it gets changed back to an RS1 zone.
Good, and I think, so there is a recommendation here, and I'm just going to read it out, and that is that council directs staff to prepare and report back with amendments to the zoning bylaw in its entirety and the works and services bylaw to ensure consistency, clarity, and that current standards are being met. Is that what
Mayor
you're looking
McEwen,
at?
so there is a different recommendation. That was one that had been passed already. We have brought forward the Works and Services Bylaw for update.
Okay.
So I can read the recommended resolution if you like.
Perfect.
It's that council receive the report titled Zoning Bylaw Review dated June 30th, 2021 from the Manager of Development Services for information, and that council directs staff to report back with an amendment to Anmore Zoning Bylaw number 568-2017 based on the information contained within this report.
Good. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councilor Weber.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I do live in this neighborhood, but I'm not in a conflict of interest because there's 34 other homeowners in the same neighborhood. Yeah, I learned about this when I built my garage, that the setbacks were the same as RS1. I'm lucky my house conforms, so if my house burned down, I could build it under the current rules, but I know a lot of my neighbors couldn't, so I think this is sort of long overdue.
Yeah, and I've heard some issues with the zoning when we made the zoning, when we updated the zoning bylaw. I guess that would have been 4 years ago, regarding the parking and non-excluded in regards to some of the parking. So it'll be good to do a wholesome review, because there's similar houses that wouldn't be able to be replicated as well in RS1 because of the parking regulations. So. Good. Any further comments, questions? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. We'll now move on to 9C, the annual report presentation. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So as required every year, council is required to present an annual report for the preceding year. The annual report is included in the agenda package on page 58, and we have also additionally met the requirements for advertising and making the annual report available for any public comments for the past 2 weeks. At this time, we have not received any comments. However, if there are any members of the public this evening that do have any comments on the annual report that they would like to voice to council, this would be their opportunity to do so. Additionally, I do have a recommendation that council approve the 2020 annual report as attached to the agenda.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. I'll open up for any comments. This can be council as well as the public. See none? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Elrick. Okay, we're We're now on to, we have no unfinished business, new business communications and community engagement policy number 70, report dated July 2nd from Ms. Elrick, Manager of Corporate Services is attached. Before I hand it over to Ms. Elrick, I do have a brief statement that I would like to read. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. Over the past few months, all of us on council have observed an alarming trend in our community involving comments on social media and at our virtual council meetings that reflect an extreme NIMBY, not in my backyard attitude that seems to be based on elitism. We understand that there are residents who are critical of council's decisions and disagree with us. You should know that members of council don't always agree with one another either. But we respectfully listen when you share your opinions and when you explain why you don't like our position on something. That's all part of the process in local government. But the extreme NIMBY and elitist attitudes, accusations of corruption, and even racism we are seeing are not part of that process, and they're not even remotely acceptable. So tonight, at our first in-person meeting since late 2020, we are speaking out to clearly lay out our concerns about the toxic discourse created online by a small number of citizens and to talk about how we as a village council are responding. I personally first became concerned during the community engagement process regarding Anmore South when I heard comments about the type of people who would come to our community if we allowed more affordable housing options such as townhomes. These are some of the actual comments shared by our neighbors. We don't want those types of people in our community, those types of people. If we want other housing option, they can go live elsewhere. The community will no longer be safe. The safety concern was also expressed in a joint letter signed by 16 people that was sent to council, and in referencing a so-called crime upsurge stated, an influx of population without our own police station and crime prevention force puts Anmore and Belcarre residents at much higher risk. Anmore and Belcarre are already becoming targets for burglaries and robberies. Bringing in thousands of new residents from all walks of life puts an even more noticeable mark on our homes. Another very dangerous and high-risk consideration. Yes, you heard correctly. People of all walks of life would bring danger to Anmore, according to the letter writer. More recently, posters have been put up at Anmore area and neighboring communities saying, "Crisis, lake at risk," as though new residents in Anmore would somehow damage the lakes and put public at risk. Finally, at the June 15th virtual council meeting, a resident expressed his objection to the mere potential for an urban designation to the Anmore South lines by saying, "My question is whether the council believes this is fair to long-standing residents of Anmore to see their popularity multiplied by at least 3 times, and solely to come from spot zoning of Anmore South." Just to be clear, this means that once this development is fully built out and occupied, the existing Anmore residents will be in the minority. Those comments are just part of the reason I'm speaking out today and this council. The discussion around Anmore South has led to personal attacks on council, and I don't mean the usual criticism that comes with the territory of being on council. I'm talking about comments about attacking council members' integrity by strong insinuations that we are corrupt. I'm going to read a few public comments. Council is all buddy-buddy and can be coerced and cajoled through friendly insiders on their payrolls. Is it just me, or is it the fact that a prior council member is on the Ioko Lands developers team paid by the developer to be lobbying? Read that as a concerning with monetary incentives by advising the current council members. Even the best of us are blinded by the opportunity to monetary gain. There's also the new council advisory group comprised, which is the APC, comprised of real estate agents and developers who are at play behind closed doors. This process is fought with the potential of severe corruption, dereliction of duty, and lack of transparency. I left out corrupt government in brown envelopes under tables, not because it isn't possible. Buying out politicians is always a possibility anywhere in politics in the world, but there's obviously not obvious proof of that going on. And then finally, has there ever been palm greasing? Looks like yes, and that yes came with 3 exclamation marks. This continued stream of innuendo and insinuation led to a question at a virtual council meeting where a resident said, based on the apparent partiality of the process to some of us, we had to ask each member of council to publicly disclose if they had any relationship with Gillick, the former Anmore South property owner. Council members then responded individually that they are not in any way associated with the property owner or developer, past or current. Even so, comments online have continued to suggest otherwise. These types of insinuations have been extremely disturbing for us individually and for our families. And our thanks go to the residents who have reached out and supported us. The attacks have recently extended to include identical members of staff, with a resident this past week calling for the termination of a staff member, saying he allowed such tree destruction and made tragic mistakes when in fact his staff person did the job correctly. And in the same post, the resident went after another identical member of staff, accusing them of being tragic, pathetic, and unaccountable, again for doing their jobs in our municipality. In fact, eventually, the resident himself acknowledged that nothing untoward had been done, but his comments were already posted and seen by multiple people. And now the latest, most disturbing commentary we're seeing involves anti-Asian racism that left us shocked. After a resident posted a link to a blog called The Breaker, a resident made a racist comment about the owners of the property who are Chinese, referencing the claws of the panda. This then led to a resident at the June 18th virtual council meeting commenting about the developer of the Ayoko lands having close ties to the Communist Party of China and asking whether this caused concern to any members of council. When a councillor asked what he was basing his facts on, he cited a blog. Just a side note, The Breaker is a blog, not a mainstream media site with layers of oversight, editing, and fact-checking. Yet this resident and others have used it as a means to advance their NIMBY agenda. These posts that can lead to further anti-Asian racism did serve one purpose, though. They were the final impetus for this council to take a stand here tonight to say that we do not support these types of comments, and we do not want to be associated with conversations that are the synthesis of what makes Anmore a wonderful place to live. Most of the conversations that have crossed these lines are taking place on the Anmore Conversations Facebook page. To be clear, we are not saying everyone who disagrees with an urban designation in Anmore South is part of this, not at all. But there have been enough people involved that it has significantly shifted the tone and dynamics of the Anmore Conversation Facebook page. With that said, we want to let our residents know that the village will no longer be sharing and posting content on Anmore Conversations. We do not want to be seen as endorsing these types of comments and conversations, even if only by association. We will continue to provide updates to the community via the village Facebook page and website, notification emails. Make sure, please, that you sign up at anmore.com and through other means. In fact, we'll be posting a statement at anmore.com tonight. If you have any questions about village activities and services or what council is doing, please contact us directly, and we'll be happy to connect with you. I've always extended my home phone number for anyone to call and have a discussion with. I welcome that. While I've been speaking on behalf of council here tonight, I also want to provide an opportunity for some of my fellow council members to share their own perspective on this issue. Councillor Weber.
Okay, it's me. Yeah, well said. I wrote about this in the Anmore Times, if anybody reads the print edition. You know, I've been doing this for a few years. I have to say I don't enjoy it anymore. I have to say this is going to be my last term. It's been brutal. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. That's just part of the job. You know, it's our job to have a vision, and a vision forward, and to address all the things that we have to be concerned about, financial concerns, you know, creating a community that I moved to 25 years ago, which was about people. It wasn't about property. It was about the people that lived here. It just so happened that they could afford the property, so it all worked out. Things change. I'm not going to apologize for my values, but I don't need to be abused. I don't get paid enough to do this job to be abused and to be lied about. My integrity is everything. This is not my full-time job. I have clients that live in the village, and when they read crap like that, do they believe it? Am I losing work at my regular business? It's not worth it. Let's have respectful dialogue. Let's disagree with each other and talk about it. But to attack the person because you disagree with them, so clearly they don't think the way I do, so there must be something wrong with them. That's ridiculous. We're never going to get anywhere treating each other like that. So, yeah, basically it's what I said in my article and emphasized by what you just read out, Mayor McEwen.
Good. Any other comments? Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, boy.
I have a feeling they're all going.
I think you might be right. Thank you, Mayor McEwen, for reading, which I agree with everything you said wholeheartedly. I did step away from social media a couple of weeks ago, so to hear that is infuriating. And I think what's the most frustrating about it is that we genuinely have the best interest of this village when we make decisions. It's practically a volunteer position, and for anyone to think that we don't have the best interest, you're wrong. And for those of you who are the vocal, what I hope is the minority, who are slamming us and making these untruthful comments, if you think that you have the best interest of the village, you don't. You do not have the best interest of the village in mind when you speak like that about those of us that give our time and have to listen to what you're saying on social media. And you guys know who you are. A lot of you are in this room tonight. I think that's all. That's all.
Anybody else want to go on, or we can move forward?
Want me to go?
Yeah.
Didn't realize it was like a firing squad and we're all going at one. There's something I want to clear up. I've written down the notes to make sure I keep it straight, but it has to do with Icona and Anmore South. I have honestly no idea what the relevance is with respect to who owns the 150 acres called Anmore South, or that we term Anmore South. But some people seem like completely obsessed with tracking down who owns what and what's happened. So I did a little research on my own, and here's what I've learned. The Brilliant Circle Group, or Gillick or Gillick, however it's pronounced, once owned 150 acres in Anmore. Those companies were owned by David Kai, whom we have never met or spoken with, so I can't really offer any insight about him. Tony Kai is David's brother and a former employee of both BCG and Gillick. Tony was replaced as a senior employee by some fellow named Bob, I think. Yeah. Who we also never met, so I don't really know him, who subsequently withdrew their proposal for development. Then at some point between then and now, Tony formed a company that I now know as Icona, which I saw in a letter, didn't know that before, and bought the Anmore South lands from his brother David. So David has zero ownership in Icona or the 150 acres, just as Tony had no ownership in BCG or Gillick in the past. Gillick is still owned by David, and that company still owns the property known as Port Moody Townsite, or that we call Port Moody Townsite. Tony has no ownership in that company at all. So the suggestion that has been flying around that it's the same owners and just name changes of the same company is 100% false. All over the social media pages, nobody bothers to check facts. They just make these statements, and they're wrong. It's not relevant anyway, because all the proposals are evaluated on merit, not on ownership structure, which I have to add, we rarely know the ownership structure until there's a proposal brought forward, because it's not really important to us. I don't know the owners of all the properties in Anmore, nor do I care to find that out. So I don't know what the obsession is, but those are the facts for anybody who seems to want to track the ownership.
Good.
I had something written down. I didn't know what everybody else was going to say, so I'll just spare everybody a repetition thing, but I echo everyone else. It's become very untenable. It's insulting and disappointing to be accused of any kind of lack of integrity or character, particularly given the character of some of the accusers, but more importantly, the fact that this is really pretty much a volunteer position. We do this because we care. We care deeply about the community. I would be absolutely wrong to say we get it right every time, but we sure try to. And to be personally attacked and constantly berated and harassed on social media is untenable, unacceptable, and everyone doing that should be absolutely ashamed of themselves.
Good. Thank you.
First off, I'd like to echo everything that's been said by the mayor and by other members of council. I've been a member of Anmore for over 30 years, and when I first came to the village, there was probably about 800 families in the village, and now there's about 2,000, or over 2,000, I believe. And if I'd stood in the way of development the way some people have been standing against development now, I mean, places would never have been built. I mean, Crystal Creek wouldn't have been built for a start, right? If I had had the same attitude as some people. I have a duty to make good decisions for this village. And I listen very carefully to what's said. And I vote accordingly. And I vote accordingly to the way I think members of the village would like me to vote for their benefit. So they don't pay higher taxes in the long run. They're not going to get saddled with infrastructure that they don't need. Anyway, I think it's we could have a respectful dialogue, and it hasn't been going that way. And I hope things change for the better. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to get back into Ms. Elrick, a report dated July 2nd, 2021 from Ms. Elrick about the Communications and Community Engagement Policy number 70.
Thank you. So just to give a brief overview of the report and policy in front of you this evening, this policy is proposed to set out some guidelines and criteria for communication messaging and social media use for the village. So some of the things included in the policy are some criteria around engagement and monitoring of the village's own social media accounts, a village social media terms of use, personal social media use for staff and individual members of council, some criteria regarding media relations, and message and content approval. So the policy before you is on page 114 of your agenda. I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have. And with that, I do have a recommendation that council approve the Communications and Communication Engagement Policy number 70.
Could I get someone to move that policy? Moved, second. I'll open up for discussion. Anybody want to say anything? Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Ms. Elrick. Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I think this is very worthwhile, and we definitely need a policy on this. I guess I need a little bit, I have some questions that wouldn't be anything that you could answer right now. I feel like I'd like to get a little bit more clarity around just the entire policy. You know, is it posting on our individual accounts versus village accounts? And I'd like to see what other policies other municipalities have. I'm sure this wasn't, you know, created from scratch, that, you know, you're not recreating the wheel, but just I didn't know it was coming forward. I just would like to take some time. I don't know if we table that or how everybody else feels, but that's...
You think it needs a little bit more
I just
work?
think it needs more work and a little bit more of a fulsome conversation with a little more clarity on some things.
Good.
Through the chair, if I
Ms.
could maybe recommend to Councillor Creer that I believe Ms. Elric may be able to answer a few of your questions tonight, and as well as sort of the process that we went through in developing the policy. And certainly if there's other pieces of information that you would like, then that we don't have answers for tonight, we could take it away and bring it back at a future meeting.
Thanks, Ms. Halliwell. I would like to know the process, where it came from and how you got landed where we're at. I guess I'm not prepared with all of my questions.
Sure, thank you.
That would help.
Through the chair, to answer your question, this policy was prepared based on other policies throughout the Lower Mainland that we were able to research and be provided with, and as well throughout Canada. It was also prepared in with our communication consultant and her recommendations in terms of best practices generally for communications. And to further answer your question regarding, I'm not sure if you were referring to the council individual social media use. So there is some reference to that on page 118 of your agenda. The personal social media use does outline some criteria for staff, but also if you refer to the last paragraph, there's some clarity provided, just that when individual council members are publishing or commenting via their own personal social media, just that they would identify that they're expressing personal views and not views of the village or council as a whole. So I'd be happy to answer any further questions or provide clarification on anything related to the policy.
Councillor Webber?
That's your mic, by the way. Yeah, I think where this sort of all came from, there's been a lot of misinformation on other social media sites. We want to get people to the village's site because the village is going to post accurate information. So when somebody says, oh, council has made up their mind in secret meetings and there's nothing we can say to convince them otherwise, well, that's kind of not only attacking council, it's attacking us as individuals, it's attacking us as a council, and it's also attacking the corporation. So Julie, say you, through the chair, you would post something on the village site to correct that information? How do we draw people to our site for the right information? I think over time people are people are smart. They're going to read something on social media, well, I don't know if that's right. That sounds a little angry to me. If people can get used to going to our site to get the truth, that would be, I think, is that the ultimate goal?
Yeah, so that's our ultimate intent, is for people to be driven to our either website or our social media platforms for information about the village. And it's not unique to Anmore. Many other municipalities see this too, where there's neighborhood groups that are set up. And people quite often mistake those neighborhood groups for being the official voice of the community, and that does seem to be happening with us as well. So we're really working towards trying to draw people to the village's social media platforms and website for information that's official from the village. And so what we would be doing through this policy, in part, there's a number of layers associated with it, is no longer posting, as Mayor McEwen mentioned in his statement, to external social media platforms, but instead, if there's misinformation that needs to be corrected, we post that on our social media platforms, and hopefully that people will be drawn to that eventually as the source of information.
Okay, good. I mean, it's the problem with social media. If people post something and if nobody says anything, it becomes the truth, right? Well, anybody can say anything they want. I don't want to stop free speech, but as long as we have it out there, like when something's said that's completely wrong and attacks the village, we need to put it somewhere, the truth. And people need to go to that. Okay.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I mean, similar to my colleagues, if this addresses, free speech is great. We all believe in that. But it needs to be factual. And the level of misinformation and pure falsehood on some of these external sites is, it's horrific. And I've said it before, it becomes an echo chamber. People are just talking to themselves, and there's no fact check mechanism. So if we are proposing here that we don't bother with the external sites, because I've long since shut that off, but monitor it so that when it's inaccurate, we post on our site the truth, then I'm on side. Hopefully, there are still residents that would like the truth versus, just lathering each other up with lies, basically. So if that's the intent, I can get on side, but I need to hear you guys say that that's the intent.
That is the intent.
I think with what we've done, though, I think we should hold off on making any rash decisions at this point and have a little bit more discussion in regards with Therese here in regards to making sure that everybody of council is happy exactly with the route that we're going in regards to this. I would, we have it moved and seconded. I would put forth a motion that we suspended until a further meeting then. And that is that a friendly amendment yeah. Is that how that would work, or?
Yeah.
Okay, deferral, okay. So you've seconded? Yeah.
So when would this further discussion take place? What are we proposing?
Yes.
Because we're getting to summer, I would like to get something in place. We can always change it later if it doesn't work.
So through the chair, if council would like to provide some direction on a direction or things that they would like to see incorporated with the policy that aren't currently there, or any other information, that would be helpful for us to be able to bring it back to council. Otherwise, if it is just indefinitely deferred, then staff does not have any direction on where you would like us to go with it.
I know for myself personally, I'd like to see the policy for Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, neighboring municipalities to be able to scan through their policy regarding this. Oh, I've got a whole handful. Okay, go ahead.
Me too, huh?
Just to make sure we adhere to correct process, which is your job, can we just email you our questions? Like, do we have to have some formal process? Because I agree with Councillor Waverink, we want to do this in an expeditious fashion. So it'd be really convenient if during these summer months and we're communicating less, we could just zap off emails and stuff.
I could maybe suggest that, absolutely, as would be with any published agenda, if council or members of the public have questions about the policy or require further clarification or have suggestions, those can be emailed into staff. I'd also be happy to follow up with our communications consultant to see whether or not she might be available to attend our next council meeting, July 20th. If council feels that that's enough time to review, we can certainly provide some additional information in terms of the policies quite quickly so that you have a good opportunity to look at that information before July 20th.
Just have one quick thing. Yeah, I think the main reason for hesitating is that I fully support that we need this in this crazy world of the socials. We definitely need some parameters around it, but what I'm uncomfortable with right now are all of the inaccurate comments that are still just dangling out there, and that I think, when that comes out, I think immediately after that, what does that look like? Do you just direct them to the village page, which I think is what we should do, or how does that look? It's being a little more like almost a weaning process, or making people understand where the facts actually are for those people that really want the facts and don't want to just engage in the noise.
So if I may, through the chair, the intent of the policy as written would be that we would not be commenting on other social media sites. However, we would respond to comments that are on our own social media sites. So if somebody commented on one of our Facebook posts, we would certainly have a process that's set out in the policy to respond to that. But the intent of the policy as written right now would that we would not be responding on other social media sites, which is consistent with what other local governments are doing throughout the province, certainly, and elsewhere.
Good. Thanks. So we've got it moved and seconded for deferral with some information, emails to come forward, possibly our communications person to come to the next meeting, and to, if we could, get copies of neighboring municipalities' policies. It would be great to be able to review as well. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of deferral? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We're now on to the mayor's report. I will try and make it brief. I just wanted to show everybody that has families in the local area. This is from Metro Vancouver Parks, and it's basically getting a nature program guide. You can see this online. It has a whole bunch of things for every day of the weeks that you can literally go on and you can get kids involved in regards to being able to go to a lot of these things. Most of them are free, and they're in various Minikata. They're all over the Lower Mainland. So please, if you have kids at home and you want to look for things to do, this is the July and August guide for Metro Vancouver Regional Parks. So I'll leave it up here if anybody wants to just take a picture of it with their phone, and you can look at all the different things. There's ages 13 plus, 19 plus, all ages in that, and there's a whole list of things that are coming up. I hope everybody realizes we're trying our best with traffic at Bunsen Lake. I've been on the phone with BC Hydro twice this last week and really pushing them. They will not. I've tried to float the idea of doing a pass system the night before, the day before. They will have no part of it. They won't even allow any cars to be staged in their park. They want them. They think it's too dangerous. I said, what's the difference of doing that in Anmore? And they just kind of didn't answer. So we are working very, very hard at BC Hydro regard to getting this done. And we have an email now because some people reached out to me and said, who can we complain to? And so we actually have an email that can we make sure gets put up on our site regarding to complain to.
We can certainly share it through our email notification.
We'll share it. And that, please do get involved. This has a significant impact on the village. We are bringing in policing at overtime. It seems to be the only way of handling this traffic. I've been out there a few mornings at 6:30 in the morning, and it seems the disregard for our bylaw person and traffic control is really not helping, and it seems like the police are the only thing that is working. And so we are trying our best. I hope I have received a few comments of this last weekend. It was better, and we're just going to keep on. So please let you know, and please reach out to Hydro and let them know about steps that you think could help as well. I'd also Martin Gregg, our bylaw as well, and our building inspector isn't here tonight, but I want to continue on with this concern that I have with septic field issues. We had 2 septic fields failures, significant failures on Ravenswood over the past few weeks. One was tried to be rectified by a landscaping company, just putting in drainage out to the front ditch. This is a huge environmental issue as well as a health and safety issue. Mr. Gregg, who is our bylaw person and our building inspector, is not qualified to even be dealing with this. And Fraser Health seems to be just passing the buck, and he has been following up with them. So I'm going to ask, again, we need to get Fraser Health here, who authorizes, administers, and also fines regarding this situation. They don't seem to be taking this seriously, and it's a very, very serious concern that we have. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch base on, Anmore, Belcarra, and Port Moody as a region, we're in the top percentage of immunizations of COVID-19. I think everybody at this table has been double immunized, and so please get out there and get it done. I think we're really leading the pack in regards to our region. So please let's keep getting the immunization and getting everybody immunized. So that's all I have for Mayor's report. Any councillor's report? Councillor Webering?
I figured out the mic. First of all, I'm very glad to be back face-to-face meetings in the Village Hall. Maybe it's kind of indicating that COVID is almost over. It's just nice to see people in front of us rather than looking at Zoom meetings. I think we've all done enough Zoom meetings at work and social events, and it's just enough Zoom. And I just wanted to say, I just bought a beautiful piece of artwork from a local artist, Tammy McCormick. I'm sure some of you know her. And she did a piece that she was inspired by the recent discovery of the 215 unmarked graves at the former Kamloops Residential School. And I think it really woke up us as a society. I think many of you are the same generation as me, and respect for Indigenous cultures in Canada was just not there. And when I saw the piece on social media, I was just immediately struck by it, and when she offered to sell it to me, I bid on it, and she gave the majority of the money to charity. So I would invite you to take a look at it. She posted it on Anmore Conversations. I actually had a lot of response about it. It's quite a nice piece, and it's not pretty. It's kind of upsetting, which is why I liked it. It's just a real piece of art, I thought. And that's all I have.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Okay, Chief Administrative Officer's report.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Just maybe following up on some of the comments that were made by Council previously on the Anmore South and some of the misinformation. And Councillor Trowbridge, I appreciate some of the information that you've researched and shared on Icona. I just wanted to address as well that there's been some, I believe, some discussion out there that there was some untruths shared by me in terms of my knowledge of the developer. And I sort of went back and had a look at the meeting schedules and when we were doing the public engagement, and just wanted to clarify that comments I made around Icona at the time were in fact truthful. My comments were specific to the structure of the development company, which at the time during the community engagement, which ended on April 20th, I wasn't aware of. I did meet with the property developer on April the 21st, which was the first I learned about the company, and there wasn't a public opportunity following that for me to share that information, so I'm sharing it now. I also wanted to clarify that the letter that Icona submitted was as part of our community engagement. As the landowner, they are absolutely entitled to share their thoughts and opinions on what council was proposing as well. And that letter was referenced in the community engagement report, summary report that was presented at the special council meeting on April the 27th. And it was subsequently, but it wasn't included as a letter, it was referenced. And it was subsequently posted on our website along with all of the other individual submissions that were posted sort of verbatim but redacted on the village's website as well. So I just wanted to provide that clarification while there was this opportunity. Further to that, other village business, we have officially issued the tender for the Anmore Community Hub, which is very exciting. We had a site visit today, and we currently have 7 pre-qualified general contractors who were hoping to provide bids. We have a current closing date of July 20th. There's sometimes a request from contractors to extend that, but we are anticipating that we will have all of the bids in by the end of this month. And we will likely then be looking to ask council to schedule a special meeting either at the end of July or early in August, so they can consider the award of the construction contract for that, and that will be posted as is typical for us on our website and all the other required means. Further to Bunsen Lake as well, and what Mayor McEwen was saying, we've been working with the RCMP. The Rural Detachment has been extraordinarily supportive. They were out on that sort of last weekend when we had the heat dome. They saw firsthand the challenges that people were facing, and they have made large efforts in order to be available up here for us in Anmore to provide that traffic control with that level of authority, and it's been it seemingly has been successful, and they will continue to try their best to schedule in so that they're here early in the morning on weekends and stat holidays to continue providing that support as well. I also wanted to say a big thank you to Miss Elric today. She was the staff person who was responsible in the village being successful in a Fire Smart grant. So she took the initiative to work with the city of Port Coquitlam, and the village of Belcarra on a joint application, and we were successful as a cohort in receiving $500,000 towards increased Fire Smart programs for all of our communities. So that's great. And especially with the devastation that a lot of our small rural communities have been seeing within the province of BC is much needed for us here in Anmore as well. I encourage you to check out all the information we have on our website around emergency preparedness, including Fire Smart principles. There's a lot of good information on there, and I would certainly encourage, with this dry, very, very dry weather that we've been having, to check out that information and take a look at your homes to see if there's anything that you should be doing. And finally, just because she hasn't knocked over her water bottle enough, I just wanted to recognize that we did have a very long-standing staff person officially retire from the village today. Tanny Cameron, who has worked in our finance department for many, many years and provided exemplary service, is leaving us. And we will have a new manager starting with us in the coming weeks. So I'll be happy to introduce her when she starts. Her first council meeting will be in September because she starts in August.
All the best, Tanya.
All the best.
That's why I didn't tell you.
I remember, Tanya, when you put your foot in the door in the old village hall and you came and you were doing the committee minutes and that, and you came in and you worked up to there an invaluable spot. So thank you for your years of service, and you will be greatly missed. And it's sort of sad to see you go. So thank you. Okay, and that's it. Okay. We don't have any commission minutes. We have a bunch of general correspondence, which is listed out, and we'll open up to public question period. 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Please name and address. Please come on up. I'll go there, and then Bill, I got you. Yeah.
Okay, Ken Uvik, 120 Lanson Crescent. As many of us are aware, Council has spent considerable effort and funds conducting a public engagement process for Anmore South Lanson. Yes, there is a question coming. The intent of Council, as residents have been told on numerous occasions, is to define our future our way. However, I now see in the Anmore Times, and I'm sure maybe Council has seen this ad placed by Icona Properties. However, I now see in the Anmore Times, the developer of Anmore South, Icona Properties, is beginning a process with Anmore residents to gather input on the vision that will determine what the future holds for Anmore South and the entire village. And that's verbatim from the advertising. So I'm asking Mayor and Council, can you clarify for me what's happening? Because I'm really confused, because I really thought this was a process driven by council and community input through the process that's taken place recently. And now I see that Icona seems to be doing a process, but they're also talking about a vision determining the future for Anmore South and the entire village. I'm not sure what that has to do with Icona. So can you...
I think all of council is sharing the same questions that you have, because we weren't aware that anything was coming forward in the Anmore Times. So when you opened it up, pretty much when I opened it up, it was the same time.
Is council going to meet with the developer and create some clarification over the process that's going on?
We don't, Ms. Halliwell?
I can provide a little bit of clarity there. So typically, in terms of a process, before it comes to council, they would submit a rezoning application, which we don't have any applications in front of us at this time. I am in discussions with Icona about their plans, but essentially it's for our information. The village's process, the analysis that council has directed, is a completely separate process to whatever Icona is undertaking. And while we would appreciate hearing from them, and I'm sure we will, in terms of what their plans are, it is up to the developer to determine how to engage with the community, and it's up to the community to decide if they want to engage with Icona.
I think council
won't be participating in this.
Take some leadership, because there's some confusion out there of what's going on.
Sure, yeah.
And
Sorry, through the chair, Ken. Absolutely what Mayor McCune said. When I opened the Anmore Times, I didn't know anything about it. They have a right as landowners to do whatever they want. They can engage with people. We can't really stop that. It doesn't mean we're not going to have our own process once an application comes in front of us. That's actually what happened the last time. They did a whole bunch of community engagement. They did a bit up here. It was mostly down in Port Moody. It wasn't really, if I recall, it was not really in participation with Port Moody at the time. So, yeah, absolutely. As long as I'm on council, there's going to be a council-led process of public hearings and public reviews and public meetings and public input.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to stop them from doing whatever they want to do.
Well, when they're talking about the entire village, that's a little bit concerning.
You'd have to ask them.
My next question is there going to be an advertised date and time for the Bellaterra public hearing? Because
Yes,
no date and
notification.
time was given at when it was adjourned, and it is required.
Yeah, notification will be, Ms. Elbert.
Thank you. Yes, there are notification requirements, and those requirements will be met through advertising in the Tri-City News, and as well as sending notifications out to affected property owners.
But is it anticipated it's going to happen in the dead of heat and summer when everybody's away?
Quite possibly, I don't know.
Well,
Thanks. Okay.
I just want to thank you, the five of you, for disclosing that you had no conflict of interest.
Name and address.
Jean Alamedi, Crystal Creek 1471. So I just want to start with saying thank you very much for disclosing that you had no conflict of interest. I'm the one that was asking that. And I'm sure it was very uncomfortable, but if you have nothing to hide, there was no reason to be uncomfortable. And I want to disclose something on my side. I've moved here with my family 3 years ago, and we love Anmore. And we didn't move here to have it disrupted and be changed into a totally different village than what we signed up for. I know life changes, I know that things change, but in all due respect, the impression that you gave as a council in terms of the timing of your proposals during COVID, when there was a lot of sensitivity with COVID, people were locked down, and with the issue of... No, I'm just trying to say something.
Ask a question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, please.
I'm just going to ask you a question. With the sensitivity of the villagers that actually love their village, do not want to see it being ruralized with the COVID lockdown and what has been going on in the last 6 months, have you, and I'd like an answer from each one of you, have you learned something from the way your process was started to give some kind of a misunderstanding with, have you learned something about things you could do better next time when you do such a proposal? Have you learned something about how you can interact better or differently, not necessarily better but differently with the village, where you actually give the impression to the residents that you want us to give an input? I'm not speaking for anybody, I'm just speaking for myself as having moved here 3 years ago, and I've seen other cities, how things go, how things work, but I don't have the impression that the residents are being listened to here. And it might be just an impression, I may have a wrong impression, but my question to you then is, have you learned something in the process? And by the way, I can't stand social media. I don't even have an account, and I don't listen to that. And I'm really sorry for some of the attacks that you may have sustained. I have nothing to do with that, and it's awful. But by the way, you're a public official, so you are in the hot kitchen all the time, and I'm glad I'm not doing my job. But have you learned something? That's what I'm trying to ask.
I think myself, we learned that we needed more data. We learned that we needed more data to be able to financially analyze the different options that we could put there.
Is that it?
That's what I've learned, yeah.
No comment.
Yep.
As I said before, I think it's council's job to show leadership and have vision. We came up with a strategy to have all options available to us moving forward on Anmore, the Ioko lands. It never meant that what was discussed originally and what was in the original proposal was ever going to happen. It was really the beginning of the process. The proposal was removed, and we did learn. We learned, even in spite of our best intentions and trying to sell the idea to people, people didn't buy it. They felt threatened by it, so we backed off. And I don't think the urban-rural thing is our priority anymore. We're more focused on what does this village want out of that property, and that's going to be my focus.
Yeah, I stated it before and I'll state it again. We learned that we fell short in what we were doing and that we needed more information, and we're gathering that now, and we'll be sharing it with the rest of our residents when it's available.
Kim?
Yeah, one of the main things I think we learned, or certainly that I learned, is that as much as we tried to draw a distinction between a designation change and a proposed development, we failed. The two things are not the same thing. Are they related? Of course they're related, but they're not the same thing. Designation change is not prescriptive. It does not prescribe what's going to be done there. It simply opens our options, makes our options as wide as they can be. That is genuinely what we approached it with, and that's genuinely what we thought we were trying to accomplish, is to open all the options possible for Anmore and its residents. And unfortunately, either we failed in the communication, or we allowed things to get away on a bad track. It became synonymous. The word urban there's only 5 designations, so we picked one. The word urban made people think about towers and high-rises, none of which would be supported by anyone on this council. So as much as we attempted to explain what the designation was, and that it's simply a preparatory move so that Anmore, over the long term, has every option available for itself, people link that with saying that we're trying to change the designation so that we can do something with the land. The doing something with the land comes from the proponent, and it comes to us, and regardless of the designation, it has to go through all the same processes. The public hearings, everything's the same. It doesn't advantage a proponent by having an urban designation. It doesn't advantage them or disadvantage them by having rural specifically. It simply gives us more options. And one of those options, quite frankly, was the opportunity for sewer. And I can't speak for council, but I will speak for myself. One of the reasons I wanted to see the designation change is that it will allow for sewer. Not necessarily today, but in the future. And when I say sewer, I mean sewer for the 150 acres, not for the rest of Anmore. So I want to be clear. The other, and I want to speak to that a little bit, but the other thing that I learned is that people thought what we do in the 150 acres is going to somehow bleed into the character of the rest of the village. I'm on the opposite page. I was hoping that any density, any commercial, anything we do in that area is excitedly defined to that area, leaving me as a large property owner to live Anmore the way I moved into it. I want to stay that way. But the sewer part, why that was relevant to me and why I don't think we did a good job of explaining it, is that one day I think it's reasonable to assume that sewer is coming here. Maybe not because we want it, but because it's required from a environmental point of view. And Mayor McEwen just identified 2 places in Ravenswood that are significantly polluting the area. It's going to change. Something's going to change. If in the future we have a significant failure like Anmore Green Estates or something like that, we're going to have a solution. And in Anmore Green Estates situation, that solution was mandated to us by the province. We didn't have a choice. If that gets mandated again, the proponent, the landowner, is not going to be excited by what I say right now, but my preference would be that they pay for the sewer to get to our doorstep, that the sewer gets brought through Port Moody to the 150 acres. Then sometime, which may be 20 years out or 30 years out, we don't have to pay for that. So my disappointment and what I've learned is that we weren't explicit enough about why we were thinking about this designation. We have to think 50 years out, not what does it do to my backyard, not what does it do to my home.
Good, thanks. Bill, I think, oh, sorry, hold on, Tim.
One thing I learned was that acreages are not sustainable. If we allow Anmore South to be built into acreages, the infrastructure will not be maintained because we don't have the money. And the only way to get money is to increase taxes. And that means everybody that's in the village now. And on top of that, when you look at the two houses on the corner of, I think it's Thompson, there's one giant property there and there's another giant property across the other side. We could see 150 of those, possibly, I don't know, on the Anmore South. So it's not as clear cut as we think.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bill, can I?
Tuck my hearing aids back in here.
Just
mask.
Name and address.
Oh, my name is Bill Cook. I live at 1660 East Road. And what is it? I am one of the people that are dead against, I'd like to see a referendum, but the last thing that I would do, and the people I talk to, I'm talking to people of all sides. Have you seen the 50 people out, like, in front of our place over there, asking for a petition, and see how diverse it was? We had people of every, aspect of our society, and was that we all want to see the same thing of referendum.
A question. You have to ask a question. Pose your question, please.
Oh,
yeah.
I think the biggest thing that the protesters, the people I'm seeing, and there's wonderful people there too, but we want to see a referendum. Like when everything comes down to it, when we decide if we're going to go urban or rural, all we want to see is a referendum. I think most of us all want to see a referendum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Andrew Simpson, 1466 Crystal Creek. Further to Bill's comment, with your question that was asked earlier about what you've learned from this experience, I hope you would have learned the fact that I don't believe you have a mandate to make this decision. We have petitions of over 50% of the voting population who oppose a change in designation at this point. And you were brought into office not on this issue. You've had numerous requests from residents to have a referendum. So the fact that the OCP can be changed without a referendum, that a designation can be changed without a referendum, I think does not sit well with the residents. So my question is, do you, each for councillor and mayors, do you feel you have the authority and the mandate to make this big decision without involving the population? Because the way that I have read your comments so far, it's very selective. It's not a small group. It's a large group of people who've had opposition, and it's very easy to tailor comments to suit. So my question is, do you feel you have a mandate? Because I think that is the key issue for the residents. We want the residents to decide, not council. Thank you.
Thank you for that applause. No, I don't feel we have a mandate. Quite the contrary. We've said that we're doing further study, and we're going to provide, garner more information for ourselves and provide that information to the public. In terms of the actual protocol, we do have the authority to make that decision without any public engagement. That does exist, and I believe I'm correct in that.
We would...
But we just wouldn't do that.
An OCP is publicly engaged.
No, I'm talking about the designation change.
It has to still need an OCP.
So we do not have that authority?
We have public engagement through an OCP,
Yeah, but-
which is part of doing a designation.
But we still can make the decision.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Correct.
have to have a referendum
That's
or
correct,
anything
yes.
else.
There is a requirement for a public hearing.
Of course. Yeah.
However, there wouldn't be a requirement for public to provide direct input on your final decision.
That's my point. Thank you. So, no, I don't, personally, I don't see us as having a mandate to change it. I see us having a requirement to make sure people can make an informed decision. And I don't think all the information is out there for people to make an informed decision. So, I think that's what we're engaging to do. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Councillor Weber?
Yeah, I'm exactly what Councillor Trowbridge said. I want people to make an informed decision. I've gone on the record saying not opposed to a referendum, if that's what people want. But I want it to be a referendum that's informed. A lot of referendums, the way the questions are posed, people don't always have all the information. We want to make sure that, I would like to see 5 different scenarios, maybe in partnership with the developer, come up with something, and you pick one. What's your vision? But we need to present the information as to why we see these as viable options, how they address the OCP, how they address our challenges, how they address things like affordable housing. Yeah, so I'm not opposed to a referendum at all.
Okay, I got,
Hi, Robert Bradbury, architect. I have a question for Chris Boyd, through the chair, of course. My question is this, it's regarding infill housing. So my understanding, Chris, is that if you have a 0.9 acre parcel, that you would be entitled to divide that and create a second infill lot, correct? If you have a lot that's between 1.5 and 2 acres, using the density of 2.04, would you then be allowed 3 lots?
Mayor McHugh, maybe I could just, the intent of the public question period is to ask questions of council.
Council, right.
And this is a technical question for
Yeah.
staff, so we would
Okay.
invite you to email your questions. to
May I
Commissioner
read
Boyd.
the question then, Mayor? May I repurpose the question to council?
you could put it to council, but again, then we're going to have to recuse ourselves, because we're not going to have anything to do with infill. So, Councillor Laidler and myself.
Right. Okay.
If you have those technical ones, I would suggest an email to our development services.
I have
Make one response through it. The policy clearly states now that it's supposed to be for one additional lot.
Yeah.
So that's how I would answer that question at this point in time.
Okay. But follow up tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. I've got...
A quick one.
No, I've got to get everybody first. So I've got Susan. Name and address, please.
Susan Muckel, 275 Alpine Drive. Sorry, I have 2 questions. One is about the Bellaterra development. Now that the creek crossing change might go through already dedicated parkland, I'm just wondering, as a member of the Parks Committee, why it never came to the Parks Committee for comment or question. That was my question. And the other one is about Bunsen Lake traffic. I have, the last weekend was a little bit better, but they still line up on.
We're trying to keep them off of there.
But I have an idea. If there's only 2 entrances into the village of Anmore, if you have traffic people starting at 6:30 in the morning at both entrances, you have to show valid thing, or you're coming to work, you can turn them away and push them back into the community where they're from.
Very good question, and the question that was brought up, and I'll tell you what the answer is that because East Road and Sunnyside roads are MRN roads, the RCMP are not allowed to impede any traffic coming into those roads.
You can't you just
They
turn?
are not allowed legally to do that.
So then we can figure out a spot, so then you have them here, because but the other part of that is, if you stop a little bit of traffic coming into the village, the people that actually live in the village who would like to go to the lake on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning would actually have a chance to get into it before everyone else.
The RCMP were very clear that they cannot do that.
I know, but like, then you can also stop them here at the corner and not have them go down.
We do that, but that's
But not
only
at
to the
6:30
lake.
in the morning, that's
No.
at after the lake is open and
Yeah.
then once it's full. So I think that at 6:30 in the morning, you should have them leaving and making them do a big circle
When
again.
I'm out there at 6:30 in the morning working with them, we are. When that, we don't allow, we're trying to prevent that from getting clogged up with traffic, so we are working on that, so.
Yeah, I did get my first one.
Yeah.
About parks.
Yeah, and can staff answer that and find, I'm part of the Parks Committee, but
Well, through the chair, so as was outlined in the report and further identified, where any changes to the creek crossing is going to fall under the purview of the approving officer through subdivision. So it's not part of the rezoning application itself, which is why it wasn't recommended to come through to the committee.
Good. Got Tanya.
Looking for the water
I'm
bottle.
trying to get all the first people, so.
Okay. Okay, so mine is too about Bellaterra. Is this even there? Since the rezoning for CD6 would open up options for Bellaterra to change the road layout and creek crossing location, I have two questions. If Bellaterra is given approval to move their Anmore Creek crossing south, how would that work? How could they be allowed to cross through parkland, whether it's land swaps, selling of parkland, what would that look like? And number two, I'm aware there's a difference between rezoning and subdivision, but I also note that the purpose of this rezoning is to facilitate the subdivision, as per my previous comments. So has Bellaterra submitted a new riparian report and geotechnical report for the new Southern Creek crossing? And if so, can the public review those documents before the public hearing?
I guess we'll refer to staff.
Yeah, so this is again a technical question, not really of council, as they are both related to subdivision. And just to clarify too, the rezoning, as was talked about today, is not about a change to the creek crossing. It's about to change the rezoning is intended to correct some inaccuracies within the zoning bylaw about the number of lots. So there's no mention of the creek crossing within the zoning bylaw itself. So that's all subdivision within the authority of the approving officer and not with council. So in terms of any requirements that they would have in terms of riparian reports or updated geotech, that would all be part of the preliminary layout review that would be issued by the approving officer once we've received a subdivision application, and we don't currently have a subdivision application at play. And sorry, just to further clarify, there's no disposal of parkland. So council has provided support for a road to go through a park, but that doesn't mean that the parkland itself, in terms of its designation, is changing. So there's no sale of parkland, no swap, no disposal of parkland in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, so the road will go through parkland.
Okay, thank you. We've got Trevor next.
Trevor Mukel, 275 Alpine Drive. A few questions. Why did council stop online Zoom meetings that allow all residents the ability to voice their opinions for comments and questions? Council knows many residents are away for the summer vacation after more than a year of COVID restrictions and won't be able to attend in-person village meetings to voice their opinion. I asked Mayor and Council, can the village have all future meetings and hearings live on internet via Zoom, not YouTube, so that the residents of Anmore have an equal and fair opportunity to ask questions and make comments about issues they have? I ask Mayor and Council for those residents who cannot be here tonight because of low immune systems or unable shut-ins. Can you cancel all future in-person meetings and present them online only until the village can have online and in-person meetings connected? With the public hearing coming up, this would be an important factor to get total community input from all concerned residents of Anmore. And my last question, is there a phone number for the bylaw officer on weekends, not the weekday one?
Yes, there is.
Because we asked the, I guess, part-time bylaw officer on the weekends when there was a traffic issue, and he only had a personal number. He did not have a village number to contact him. So we're wondering if you could post that on the internet, on the village website.
Okay.
Because we've called Public Works and they say it's not their issue, call the bylaw officer.
Okay.
And the weekday bylaw officer doesn't answer the phone because he's off, so.
Good point, yeah. We'll get
If you
on
could
that.
allow the residents to have that phone, or that would be great.
Yeah, I know on the Zoom, we don't have the Wi-Fi capability to do it here. We could even have 2 Zoom calls going at the same time, and that's
I've
the reality
done that
that
for
we're
my,
facing.
sorry.
So, Julie, did you want to
Yeah,
answer?
so maybe just further, the question that you first answered, Mr. Meikle, was addressed by Ms. Elric at the beginning of the meeting. So
Okay.
the reason that we're not doing the Zoom meetings is because we don't have the technological capabilities outside of our internet connection to be able to have Zoom along with live streaming. So we are providing and following the directives and the recommendations of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, which is encouraging coming back to in-person meetings under the current recommendations and restrictions, which we're doing today, which is less than 50 people. If you don't have your second dose, which is 2 weeks after your second dose, that's when you're fully vaccinated, then you're recommended to wear a mask in an indoor setting. We're following those recommendations and guidelines as we have through the entire pandemic. We are live streaming the meeting right now, and that will be available as an archived video. Although we don't have the interactive capabilities of Zoom, people are welcome to email in any input or questions that they have, and those will be addressed during the meeting. So there's no restriction or lesser involvement of the public as a result of moving back to the format that we were doing last year.
So, sorry, there is a way of asking a question during YouTube?
Not during the meeting, but
Okay.
prior to the meeting, if somebody wants to read through the agenda ahead of the meeting and pose their question to Ms. Elric via email. We just ask that it's before 4 o'clock on the
Right.
meeting day.
And then will
so
that be
we've got
read at
some
the
time.
meeting?
It will, yes.
It's very
Okay.
common with public hearings that
No, that's fair enough. I
we get a
just,
few of them.
It
it's
will
just
be
that
addressed
I have a
during
few residents I know that can't make it here.
Yeah.
and it's-
And there are issues that they want to address, so.
And so that is actually above and beyond what we did previous to COVID, where
Okay.
we didn't allow for emailed questions to come in. People
Okay.
had to be in person. So we are going above and beyond to provide
Okay.
additional
Fair
opportunities
enough.
for people. And that's going to include the public hearing as well. We have very stringent requirements that require us to make sure that people can participate here and ask questions at the public hearing. And so that's what we'll be doing. And then in relation to your last question, the bylaw number is already posted on our website. And we did, on the first day when we had the bylaw officer come back, just have a bit of a miscommunication where our regular bylaw officer, who is here Monday to Friday, usually forwards that number to his other work phone, and he had just forgotten to unforward it. So unfortunately, there was that time. But
Okay,
we got
so,
that
so the new
rectified.
number's on the village
Yep,
website? Okay.
it's really easy to remember.
Okay.
It's 778 7 bylaw. 778 7 bylaw. 778.
Okay.
Oh, so close.
Okay.
It's on the website regardless.
Good, thank
Okay, thank you for your time.
And it ends in bylaw for
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Okay, I've got one last, sorry, do you want to go first then? If you could just come up with your name and address, please.
It's Deb Buick, 1100 Thompson Road. It's about infill, but I know you say email, I've done it. I haven't gotten answers I wanted. When we bought 30 years ago, we bought 1.69 acres. When we bought, the bylaw was if you had 1.6 of an acre or more, you could split off the 0.6 acre for a family. When we tried to do that, at that point we had 2 kids, thought perfect, the kids will get the property, they can have 2 houses on it. So when we tried to do it, we find out no, nobody knows anything about this. I heard once when I emailed it was grandfathered, or it wasn't grandfathered. I heard another time that nobody knew anything about it. I heard another time I should find the documentation for that. You should have the documentation. So I want to know why council doesn't have the documentation for that, first of all. And another comment is, I've heard 2 comments tonight saying, you know, we want the age in place, we want our kids to be able to move onto our properties. Then I heard Councillor Cryer say, well, you know, you can sell it for $1 million. My kids can't afford to pay $1 million for the property and build a house on it. That's just not feasible unless we're rich. We're not rich. We built a modest home on our property, placed it so we could put another home on for our kids. And now we're told that we can't. We want to give them a deal, so if we sell it to them for $400,000, have to give $150,000 back to council or to Anmore, we can't afford to retire on that. So it doesn't make sense when you say age in place when it's not feasible to do it for the kids. So I just want to know why it has to be $150,000 and why council does not have that information when we first bought 30 years ago.
Mr. Boyd, do you want to speak to the,
So with regards to the 0.6 of an acre, that comes down to how bylaws will evolve over time, and sorry, I don't know what the bylaw was 25, 30 years ago. All I know is the bylaw that's in place right now, and it doesn't have that provision at this point in time with regards to the 0.6. And so, just in reference to your grandfathering comment, there's no such thing in the common law as grandfathering. You can't do it, it's not allowed. And so there's no such thing of, oh, well, it used to exist in this bylaw, so it should exist in this bylaw. That's legally not allowed, you can't do it. So just in relation to that, when it comes to zoning, you have to adhere to the zoning that's in place right now and come before council for rezoning if your property isn't zoned in that particular fashion.
and the 150, Ms. there's a fairly, fairly detailed report that came out from JP Rollo regarding that I would suggest we could send. Do we have copies of that, Ms. Halliwell, or are they on the website?
It would have been part of the meeting where council deliberated over infill, so
Okay.
it should be available on our website.
It should be available on our website, and that goes through the whole detail of where that number came from. It was done by an independent economist, so.
Why all the other communities are way low? Why is Anmore so much?
It addresses all of that in the report, so. Okay.
Can I just make
Go.
Well, let's go. So I have to reiterate, the $150,000, legislatively, that is a negotiable number, and that's where it refers to land and other methods perhaps that could be given up instead of the $150,000. So it's important to note that yes, expectations set regards to a financial number purely is that something has been based on a JP Rollo report, and that's an expectation. Now, council now have to be seen to be negotiating again over that number. So you can come forward with their number, it's a negotiation. Council have stated their position at this point in time. And so there's also the other part that maybe it's less a contribution in money, and there's a piece of land that goes with it as well. So that's how the negotiation side works legislatively. So I just want to kind of reiterate those points.
Okay. Mr. Noel.
Good question. Would the council delay addressing Anmore South till after the upcoming election so that the village has time to meaningfully recover from COVID first? That's my question to all of you.
Could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
So would the council delay addressing Anmore South till after the upcoming election so that the village has time to meaningfully recover from COVID first?
I don't know how to, I would suggest that we are going to continue the discussion in regards to the analysis as it comes back. So there's no timelines in my perspective as to how long that's going to take. So I think we're actually coming back quite strong from COVID, and it's really encouraging seeing, people getting out and being with neighbors and that. So and like I said earlier, our immunization rate is fairly significant here. We're doing a good job. So. Well, it's over a year away, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. So. Okay. See no other question? Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. It's
Name and
Stefan
address,
Mitchell,
please. Yeah.
2345 Sunnyside Road. So I'd like to know, what are we going to do with my application? I started like 10 months ago. I submitted my fees and my plans before this change. What's going to happen?
I believe that, Mr. Boyd, that your
Well, my architect
proposal
tried to ask
has
the question, and it then became a technical question, but basically he's asking the same thing, right?
I believe at the last council meeting, your proposal was denied.
Why?
The reasons given at that point in time.
What reasons?
They're all on the record. Am I correct?
No, I called in and I was the last person. You said, oh, there's a Stefan Michel on the line, and you hung up on me, and I never even got to talk. So
I hung up on you?
Yeah. I was the last person. June 1st.
It's in relation to the council meeting.
Oh, I don't recall.
I just, like I'm listening to all you guys, like talking about all this stuff with the social media and that, and I'll tell you a little story here. I cut a tree down on my property because the bylaw told me that I could in an emergency.
I'm going to have to get into a question here.
Okay.
Please.
Why are your staff abusing people? Why are your staff abusing people?
Yeah, I don't, that's not happening,
Well,
Mr.
it is happening.
Yeah.
I was
I'm sorry,
I was
okay.
called into a meeting here with Tim Harris, Kevin Dickin, and I was told
again,
because I
that was
cut that
way
tree
before
down,
our
that they were
time.
going to make my life hell.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, we're not going to discuss this further.
Yeah.
Okay? So is
But
there
it's
any
the
other
truth.
questions, or we're going to have to, I'll just move for adjournment. Okay, move for adjournment. Someone to move it?
So what are we doing
Moved.
with my property?
Second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.